Hello.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Just letting you know I'm wearing the original, let's see if you can see it, PTUK t-shirt. It's a classic. It's not their nice spiffy new one.
But, and I am wearing one of the more subtle APG t-shirts.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's very subtle.
Very subtle.
And I have a subtle logo behind me.
Ah, yes. I think my t-shirt's bigger.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, yeah, Nick and I were guests on the Plain Talking UK live podcast today, or recording anyway, and we had a blast.
Very nice. Yes.
Yes. And now we're here, and all of us are here except Miss Stephanie. She's having some issues with her work schedule today, and we're hoping that she'll be able to make it before we end today's show. But we're not going to wait for her to start because we wouldn't be starting probably for another hour and a half, something like that. So we'll go ahead and get started, and then hopefully she'll be able to join us at a reasonable time. Okay. Let's see. Let me do everybody have their recorders going?
Not quite yet.
Okay. Don't hurt yourself.
Yeah, and I've got a bad back, I seem to recall.
Yeah.
Session.
Yeah, how was that going today? Did you stood up? Or you were standing for most of the PT?
Yeah, I was, but no, it's not too bad.
Okay.
Hanging on in there is the answer, and
Okay.
I am now recording.
All right. And I will, this is confusing. I have 2 trackpads and a mouse all in front of me, and I'm just going to have to make sure I choose the right one for something to happen.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Okay. Does it look like I'm recording? It does. Why don't you all say something?
Hello, hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Good. And some music here. Not really music, but it's a sound. It's wonderful music, don't you think?
Music to my ears.
And then let me crank up Farrago, which is a sound playing app on the Mac. And why is that not playing? It says it's playing. Oh, I know. Guess why?
You haven't turned it on.
It's on mute.
Oh,
that channel.
mute button.
That was just me playing something. I recorded that the other night.
Very nice. I thought you were a trumpet player.
Do you believe me, really? That was not me playing. Okay, stop. All right.
You're a very talented individual.
Well,
everybody should always believe that.
Yeah, that was not me. All right. So let me select these tracks that I just recorded and delete them. Move the cursor back to the start and hit the record button again, and we'll do our clapping.
I've got the clap.
Do you? I'm sorry. There's antibiotics for that, I think.
Not the kind I've got.
Uh-oh. Oh, you got the big clap. The one with the little diagonal stripes.
Ooh. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, it can be painful. Watch your fingers. All right. 3, 2, 1. There we go. All right. We have that going for us. So recorders are going. We have the YouTube thing going. Done a sound check. Looks like all the channels are working. And let me go over here to the Evernote and make sure that I have that all set up. Let's do a sound check again on this.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Good latency check.
Probably.
That's okay. That's why when Matt said, Jeff joined me to sing happy birthday to Jenny in Rome. It was Jenny, right? In Rome?
Yeah, I think so.
I said, are you sure?
Yeah, I thought
with his latency.
clever software that would take out the latency, but no.
I realized right away that what was happening, because he'd start singing at a normal tempo, and then as soon as he heard my voice, then he started slowing everything down. And I think, well, this is not going to work, because if you keep slowing down, I'm going to slow down, and then you're going to slow down, and then we're going to be going, happy birthday. Yeah, would have taken forever.
Yeah.
So anyway, now the cool thing is, in post, you could actually shift the tracks a little bit and make it sound like you were actually together.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, it's too much work. Okay. Oh, do I have I don't have the chat room up. Ha! I gotta do that.
No, well, don't worry. There's nobody of any.
Nobody there? Everybody's burnt out?
Of any worth in there.
Oh, yeah.
They're all a bunch of hangers-on.
That goes out without saying, doesn't it? Okay, APG, show notes, and get the YouTube page. And yeah, that was me just a few seconds ago. I was so young then.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. And I think we are ready. Now, Liz, you heard that we were not waiting for Steph, right? Guess not. Okay. Here we go. So are you ready to do the timing, Miss Liz? 25 seconds into the future, Mrs. Liz. Miss Liz. Hey, Nick Camacho. Have your ears been itching? Richard Bell, I don't find your humor interesting. Okay. No, I do actually. Major bell. Isn't that what they have in Philadelphia? A major bell? Yeah. All right. So it looks like about 45. And here we go.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 378.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 1A in the APG headquarters building in Roswell, Georgia. Today's show is recorded on the 7th of June, 2019.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Would you ride and he's flying by with the Airline Pilot Guy?
In today's episode, the latest aviation news and commentary, your feedback, and this week's plane tale, DAX on D-Day, Part 1. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 378 is ready for pushback. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast, and I'm a captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier based in Atlanta, GA. And joining me today from across the pond in his house in the beautiful English countryside, a professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, captain for an international airline based in London, Captain Nick.
And occasional podcaster with PT UK. Hi, how's things going, Jeff?
Great. Feels like I haven't seen you in ever. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Lovely to see you. Yeah, it's great. Just finished show with PT UK. Looking forward to ours because we have more fun.
Yes, we do. And we're all glad you're here to join us, as well as our second guest host from the studio near the Concord Covered Bridge in Smyrna, Georgia. He's a barbecue master, a motorcycle rider, a pontoon boat skipper, underwater photographer, and a captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier, Captain Dana. You're muted. We still can't hear you.
Shall I imitate him?
Go ahead.
Hello, it's Dana here. I'm ready to great to be on the show. How's it going over there?
That's what he sounds like to you in your head. Yeah, he's having. Oh, I hear you now.
I did nothing.
Oh, that's weird.
That is weird. I mean, seriously, I didn't touch.
Technology is just acting up. Well, it does
Yeah.
that sometimes.
Sometimes because I cycled the mute thing, but it maybe it was just stuck or something. Well, great to be here, Captain Jeff, Captain Nick. Good to see you both, and looking forward to a fun Friday night of APG.
We are as well.
Can't get enough. Can't get enough.
Can't get enough of you, baby.
Seems like ages since we were on last time, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was. It was like almost 2 weeks, about a week and a half, a little bit more than a week and a half.
Yeah, it's, what, a week ago Tuesday? So
yeah, week ago Tuesday. And today is the 7th of June, which is a Friday. And we didn't play the intro for Miss Stephanie because she is still at work or perhaps en route from a location north of Charlotte. And we're hoping that she'll be leaving soon and arriving back home soon. And when she does, then we'll go ahead and introduce her and find out what's going on with her. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and catch up with the three of us here. And let's see, Dana, what have you still on vacation?
No, sir. I flew a 4-day trip last weekend. Had the wonderful opportunity to have my lovely bride accompany me up to the wonderful city, Madison, Wisconsin.
Oh, I love Madison.
It's a great overnight, and I really didn't advertise a whole lot. I know we have a couple of our favorite listeners up there that would like to come meet us, but I got in real late Saturday night, about 12:30 our time, about 11:30 Central Time PM, and then spent most of the day and just decided to walk around with my lovely Julie and explore the town. I had never walked over to the campus of the University of Wisconsin. Very nice campus right there on the lakefront. And explored it a little bit, and we just had some really good burgers for lunch, and that was about it. So she had no problem getting to and from. She actually got first class heading up to up to Madison. That's unheard of these days. Coming back, she was a little more uncomfortable in business in economy comfort, but that's not so bad. She had an aisle seat, but honestly, it was the first time she has flown with me as she did come out with me on one trip when I was on OE when I was captain. This is her first trip that she's been able to join me as me being the captain on my own. So that was very, very rewarding.
Was she scared?
She was petrified. She knew that I was going to be flying the airplane. She was sitting there, white knuckles and shaking in her boots. I did embarrass her though.
Yeah,
because I took a little snippet out of the Jeff Nielsen playbook, and that is I go and I talk to my passengers. I actually stand up and talk to the first class passengers face to face and introduce myself and thank them for flying with us and crack a couple of minor fun jokes.
I don't do that.
You know, yeah. Well, I always say like it's 16 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
That's
something extra that you do. I just stand at the cockpit door and talk to the whole cabin.
Oh, so after I talk to my first class passengers,
yeah.
Then after I do that, then I come and I make the PA standing up in front of everybody. So
gotcha.
I address the first class passengers first, thanking them for their business, their loyalty, and then I come back and I make the PA. So when I was up in first class, I made mention that my wife Julie is on the airplane and embarrassed her and introduced her to everybody up front. So other than that, an uneventful 4-day trip.
It was a good thing that she was sitting in first class.
Why is that?
Free drinks, because I'm sure that helped her nerves.
Yeah, it sure did. Of course, she doesn't, she never takes advantage of it. If it was me, by the time we got up to Madison, the airplane would have been out of Woodford. She just had 3 glasses of wine.
Mm-hmm.
on a two and a half. Well, of course, one on the ground and 2 in flight.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's
That's not including the bottle that she had on the way to the airport.
Oh yeah,
Bam.
bada bing, bada boom.
You know what? I wish I had something that I could play. Oh, I do. There
There
it is.
you go.
Yeah.
So other than that, just an uneventful. Had an uneventful 4-day, all late night stuff. I had a Cleveland layover, which is a relatively short one. I think it was 12 hours, and then I had Madison and where else? Oh, Omaha. Went to Omaha, Nebraska. Again, real late get up in there about just before midnight local time, and then spent
I'm
most
curious,
of the day
Dana. Omaha being the name of one of the D-Day beaches, do they do anything special at Omaha, Nebraska? I'm assuming that's the same place that they named the beaches on. I was just curious.
Yeah, no, Omaha, Utah.
Oh, are there more than one Omaha? Is there?
Well, no,
Well, there
Utah.
probably is, but it's probably named for the Nebraska one, Omaha,
Yeah,
Nebraska.
probably.
Interesting.
No, I didn't see anything special going on this past week.
I was just curious.
It's the home of most people know Warren Buffett. That's where his Berkshire Hathaway is based. A lot of good
I've had a lot of
steaks there.
pre-stall Buffett, but I've never had a Warren Buffett.
And we talked about Warren Buffett and Omaha. I think it was it the last show or the show before where we were talking about the .com thing or the companies that are there to track corporate jets and try to
Oh,
kind
that's
of
right. Yeah,
decide
yeah,
whether
yeah.
or not there's some kind of a deal brewing or whatever.
Yeah, that oil company, petroleum company was, that's interesting.
So,
You know,
for those that
sorry.
aren't, go ahead. I'm
You know,
sorry.
Dana, I was just going to say, I always hated bringing my wife on a flight because one of the first times I did it, we were coming home from New York, and she had been sleeping. She came on the flight deck just as they were about to start serving breakfast, and she walked to the flight deck, and immediately one of the engines failed. So,
Honey,
I said,
stay home next time.
yeah, exactly right. No, you're just bad luck for me. I don't need you to fly with
In
me.
so many ways.
No,
Yeah, not probably the right thing to say.
no, I wouldn't go that.
I know you wouldn't mean it.
No, that's right.
And you wouldn't
It's
say
okay.
it.
She doesn't listen to this show.
Yeah, good thing, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And unlike you, I get nervous about having her on, come out with us because, if she can get there, it's great. I've left her sitting at the gate a couple times when I've brought her in the past and pushing back and
Yeah. Watching them
no
in the-
wife on there waving, bye, honey.
That happened
Good
with my
luck.
oldest daughter and my wife when my oldest daughter was like 3 years old.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it was the first flight of the day. I figured there wouldn't be a problem. Took them all darn day to get home. But anyway, that's a whole long story that I'm sure I've already told at least one time on this show. So other than that, what else has been going on, Dana?
Well, I was just going to say, for those folks that are not watching the actual podcast live, which is most of our listeners, I have, I'm wearing the USS George H.W. Bush CVN number 77 in honor of our military, because this week, actually yesterday, was the D-Day invasion 75 years ago. So in honor of our fallen heroes and our heroes that are still with us that got to be over there in the French and American president were together and we're celebrating the sacrifice. Celebration, I guess, is really the wrong word. Honoring their sacrifice. I am as well in honoring them in my own way that I can. So. Other than that, I get some pretty bad news about my boat this past week. I'm just not going to talk about it.
Okay.
So,
Is it terminal?
yeah, really kind of is. So,
Okay. Well, I'm glad we had a chance to spend some time with her.
Yeah, well, it's I can't do anything with it right now. I'm stuck with this boat. Like I can't even sell it right now if I wanted to.
But can't you can't put it out there and ride on it and use it?
I can.
Yeah.
It's costing me an awful lot of extra money. And the best way I can describe it is if you buy a vehicle, your car, and you buy it and the fuel gauge doesn't work, and the RPM gauge doesn't work, and you need those to set everything. And it hasn't worked since I bought it brand new. So they
your
still
ear.
don't. They
Use your ear.
Yeah, well, it's so quiet I can't. But I got to be able to set. I got to be able to set the trim, just like in an airplane. You know, how in the airplane we can look down on the airplane and see where our trim is set. I have no way of knowing where my trim is, and I have no way of knowing what my RPMs are because it's intermittent at best. And the problem is that the engine is a digital engine, and this was not told to me. And not only that, he put the wrong engine on my boat. I'm supposed to have a short shaft, no pun intended, leave that alone. But I've got a long shaft, boys. So they gave me the long shaft, which is 5 inches longer. That's what she said. But so anyways,
That's what she said.
yeah, so I have too long of a shaft in the water. It's going too deep. And part of the reason why I had the problem last year with the prop. And then I don't have the ability to set the engine properly, and they have not addressed the issue of either of my issues, and that is the RPM and trim gauge, and also the positioning of my motor. So it's been a
Well, I
very
hope you can
frustrating-
resolve that. Maybe you can take them to small claims or something.
Well, that's what the devastating news was yesterday, and why I got drunk last night. I spoke to a consultant, a lawyer, as to what my recourse is with these people, and I basically have no recourse. I can take them, and I can take the boat out of the water, have an estimate done to repair the boat, which is non-repairable because they can't figure out what's causing it. They've been out numerous times, so I could take it to a few different repair shops, get some estimates, and see what it costs to repair. The bottom line is either the engine gauge, the entire gauge panel has to be changed to digital, or the engine has to be changed back to analog. Neither one is a inexpensive fix, but this is what they gave me. So
good thoughts going your way, Dano. Hope that you'll be able to resolve it eventually.
I hope so.
Very good right now, but okay.
That's stuff that's going on with me. But other than that, I'm on reserve. Last 2 days, I actually put my name in the hat for short call yesterday. They did not use me, so I fully anticipate the rest of the month that I will be flying quite a bit, though.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll see you out there.
Maybe I am on call Monday through Thursdays, basically.
Okay.
So that's good.
Sweet. Well, I'll go ahead and go next because I think we'll end with Nick because he has a lot of stuff to tell us about, including a visit that he made to Duxford. But for me, since the last show, I was on a trip on my last show, and then I was home for Saturday, Sunday, left on another 4-day on Monday through Thursday. And it was a treat not to have to carry my extra bag full of audio gear. And so I just had my regular rollerboard and backpack, and did a lot of work for, well, you know, that training that was supposed to be finished by the 31st of May, Dana?
Yes.
I finally ended up getting it finished, I think, on the second or third day of my trip in June. Because the real deadline is the end of June. Anyway, so knock that out and some other things that go on behind the scenes doing this podcast thing. And on the second, so it was first night was it was tough. It was a tough trip, Dana. Did you see my trip?
No, I didn't look at what you actually did.
So the first day was one leg to Wichita. And the next day was 2 legs, Atlanta to Newark. The third day was Atlanta to Newark. And the last day was 1 leg home from Newark to Atlanta. So it was hard.
I'm glad people can't see what I'm doing. And I'm telling you, you're my number one friend.
Oh, yeah, that's nice. Thank you for that.
The advantages of being senior, although this last trip, I have to say, was not, I had 1, 2, 2, 3.
Yeah, that's good.
So it wasn't a terrible
No,
trip.
that's a decent trip.
It was a very good trip, actually.
Anyway.
But I'm jealous. I tend not to look at your stuff anymore because
Well,
it just
I can understand you not
elevated.
wanting to look at my stuff because it would make you jealous.
No, your trips.
That's what she said.
Oh, the trip. Okay.
Yes.
Let's
be more specific there.
Let's move on. So on the second Newark layover, I had the opportunity and pleasure to meet up with some APGers. And let me see here. I want to make sure I get everybody's name here. Jose Enrique, who is a new, haven't met him before, and he's a relatively new listener. I think he said he started listening September of last year. And Jonathan Alexandratos, who everybody knows, he's been at several New York City meetups. In fact, the first one was when Nick was there and I flew up from Atlanta, and we had a big meetup at the Beer Authority, I think it was called, in Manhattan. And Jonathan was there for that. Also there for that one, and the one with me just a couple of days ago, Tanya. And so it was the three of us, well, four of us. So it was Jose, Jonathan, and Tanya, and myself at PJ Carney's Pub on 7th Avenue and 57th, maybe, something like that. And had a really good time. And we didn't do any recording, so you don't have to, listen to that. And because I didn't want to, it was kind of noisy in there, so it would have been hard to really hear anything we were saying. But we did snap
that's important.
a selfie, and we'll put that in the show notes, hopefully, if I remember to put that in there. Oh, there, Tanya's in our chat room. Woohoo, so much fun. 57th, between 57th and 58th. And Stephanie Plummer says, don't worry, HR is listening in. Uh-oh. Okay. Mind your P's and Q's. Looks like Steph has begun her journey home. And looks like the weather in that area of the country, northern Charlotte, is not very good. Not very good here in Atlanta either. Storming here. Anyway, so be safe, Steph, and we'll try to behave ourselves. Let's see.
Not very hard.
No.
Trying,
That's
is.
what she
Not behaving
said.
ourselves.
Okay. So what else? That's pretty much it. I don't go back out again until Wednesday of next week, so I have several days off, which is nice. And we have an update on Oshkosh. The T-shirt design is finalized, and I can't wait to share it with everybody. In fact, I'm going to share the design right now, if that's all right. You think that's all right, crew, for me to show the design of our shirt? Hello?
Yeah, let's do it.
Listening on?
It looks brilliant. No.
Oh.
I had my foot on the mute switch and I forgot to take it off. Can you believe that? How stupid am I?
I can't believe it.
I used to fly airplanes.
So I have the T-shirt. This is going to be on the back of the T-shirt. It's going to be a dark navy blue shirt with the Acme Air logo on the front that everybody knows and loves. And the person who designed that, Jim Mercado, also helped us with this design. And so we were going to call it like Osh, what was it? Osh Bash. And then
Osh Bash, yes.
Yeah, we learned quickly that we couldn't do that because there's some organization that does Osh Bash, and has been doing it at Oshkosh for quite a number of years. And so we decided, hopefully nobody else is doing this. And if you are, we do apologize. We weren't aware of it, but this is going to be Osh Blast. So we are going to have a blast at Oshkosh. And so Jim came up with this beautiful design. And if you're listening to the audio only, I'll put a picture of the art in the show notes, and you can see it that way. And I'll just briefly describe.
We could make it the show title and put it on the.
We could do that.
Show art.
Okay, that would be
That
nice
would be
and easy,
cool,
wouldn't
wouldn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so you'll just look for the cover art for this episode, and if you have Overcast, by the way, I really highly recommend if you have. I think they're only on iOS, but if you have an iOS machine, an iPhone, and you listen to a lot of podcasts, do yourself a favor and download Overcast, which I think is the best podcast client app in the world. And I put in I have been doing this for a while, putting in individual artwork for each episode that it essentially mirrors what you can see our artwork on the website for each of the shows. And by the way, I've employed Nick's wonderful creative talent to help me with that. In fact, he's doing it the last couple of shows, and they look fantastic. So much better than what I was doing.
Rubbish! I just got more time.
No, because for me, it was like the last thing to do before I hit the publish button is to try to come up with a title and then some artwork to, reflect the title. And by the time I got to that point, it was like, oh, my brain was dead. All my creativity is gone, and you're just knocking it out of the park. So thank you for helping me with that. Anyway, so if you have Overcast, you'll see the individual episode artwork. And I believe that that's one of very few, if not the only one, that will actually do that. So, take a look at that Overcast app. I think it's free, and then I think you can buy a pro version for like a couple bucks. And Marco, I believe, is the guy that does the app. And one of the new features on Overcast is a really cool thing. I haven't used it yet, but you can actually like take a snippet of whatever thing you're listening to on Overcast, and I think it's like a minute-long snippet, and then you can use that and upload it to Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and promote. Like if there's something really funny on the show that you want to share with somebody else, you can do that very, very easily, I'm told. Again, I have not used it myself yet, but anywho, enough promotion for Overcast. But it's a fantastic iOS podcasting app. I highly recommend it. So check out the artwork for our show number 378, and there's the t-shirt. It's basically, of course, you got to have something to do with beer, right? So it's a beer glass with some a nice head on it, and
very cloudy.
Very cloudy, and it's gold and Osh Blast in kind of retro font on the front of it, and of course it has wings because beer and wings, right? And not chicken wings, but like regular wings, very similar to the wings on our Acme Air logo. And at the top it says, I got Oshkoshed with the APG crew at Osh Blast 2019. And then at the bottom, Airline Pilot Guy Show. Excuse me, Airline Pilot Guy Show. And so I've set it up already on Teespring through the website. You can get there. However, I haven't actually activated it yet. And the way we're going to do this is, and we'll have more details when this actually goes live. We are going to, for those of you who are actually going to be at Oshkosh, and you want your shirt when you get there, so you'll pay the lowest price, whatever. I don't know what that price is going to be yet. So I'm hoping it's going to be $10, $15, not a lot. And you won't have to pay for any shipping or anything else because Nick and I will be the shippers. We'll have the box of shirts with us in the car /RV on the way up there, and then we'll distribute the shirts once we are at Oshkosh. And so we'll have a way for you to let us know what you want, sizes, numbers, that kind of thing. And I think that Liz is going to help organize that, take the orders and such, and then we'll figure out a way to get you to pay us for it once we're at Oshkosh. And the Teespring method, which will go live on the website hopefully very soon, will be your way. If you're not able to join us at Oshkosh, you can order the shirt anyway and wear it with pride. And you can, and in addition to a regular T-shirt, there are other options such as a woman's T-shirt, little different style. Have like a comfort shirt, a premium shirt, and a regular unisex male T-shirt. And we also have a couple of different tank tops, including a woman's tank top, which I think that Steph will look great in when she is running the 5K on Saturday. And so here, let me take this off the screen because you don't need to look at that anymore. So we're very excited, to say the least. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to scare you. That's my face. So we're excited about that. Again, hopefully soon we'll have that up and running for you to order your shirts, and that's both for the US and the UK. I'm not sure if you're outside of either of those locations. I'm not sure if you can still buy stuff and have it shipped or not. Not clear on that yet, but we'll let you know. And yeah, Nick, I hope that you can pick it up in person too. Nick Camacho. we're going to be talking about you later in the show, very soon, actually, I think. And what else? As far as the plan is concerned between Captain Nick and I, Captain Nick is going to be flying into Atlanta. I think I've already mentioned this before. Hopefully the weekend, like the 13th, 14th, we're not sure yet. There might be something going on that may affect that. But at some point, Nick and I are going to get in the car and drive up, hopefully on Monday, to Dayton, Ohio, to see the U.S. Air Force Museum. Probably we'll do that on Tuesday, the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th. But on the 15th, when we're driving up, we're going to meet up with Greg Peterson, I believe, who works for, and sorry, cover up your child's ears, but this is the actual name of his company, Big Ass Fans. Or Big Donkey Fans, if you'd prefer. So it's a real thing. Yeah, check it out. Bigassfans.com. You can look at the Big Ass Fans on from his company, and he lives in Lexington, so that's right on the way. By the way, we're going to be driving right by London, Nick. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, you'd think that you wouldn't pass London on the way up to Lexington and Cincinnati and Dayton, but you do. And so maybe we'll get a picture of you in London, Kentucky. We're going to meet up with Greg, and he is either, depending on our schedule, going to have coffee with us, or if we have enough time, we'll stop and he may give us a quick tour of the company. And hopefully ending up in Dayton that night, Monday night. And then, as I said, U.S. Air Force Museum on Tuesday. And then maybe leave on Tuesday, Wednesday at the latest, head up to Chicago and pick up the RV. So there you go. That's what we have planned tentatively for now. And anything to add, Nick?
No, other than plans change, but we'll do our best to stick to that.
Right. Yeah, that's our, as you said, that's plan A or B for now. Could be plan C or F or H by the time we get around to doing this. All right. Now, I noticed something. Oh, by the way, if you want to keep track of all these meetups and goings-ons, please check out the APG community calendar. You can find that on the website, APG or airlinepilotguy.com/calendar. And you can also be a Slacker, an APG Slacker, by joining Slack. Hillel will tell us how to do that toward the end of the show. And that's all I'm going to say for now until I think of something else. So
I have something to say.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm looking at the video and I noticed that you have some strange man sitting next to you in your podcast studio, Dana. And he looks familiar to me.
Yeah, I don't know if you've know him or have met him before. No, actually, I know you have. It seems like a very nice gentleman. So I'm going to introduce him. Sitting next to me.
Just don't turn your back to him, Dana. I'm just warning you.
Oh, my God. Well, I have a shotgun sitting right next to me just in case. So it's okay. No, I'm only kidding. Anyways, I got a text, actually an email this morning. And I looked at the email and it was a gentleman asked me if I'm going to be available tomorrow in Atlanta to meet up. And I said, okay, yeah, great. It's tomorrow, Saturday, have no plans. And I said, yeah, well,
wait a minute. Hang on. I'm going to check my messages to see if I got one of those texts as well.
No, he said he didn't want to see you.
I don't see anything from
he didn't want to see you this time. He said he just wants to meet the infamous Captain Dana.
Okay.
But my stupidity, of course, I looked at it and I read it this morning and said tomorrow, but he sent it last night. So then it dawned on me, he wants to meet up Friday night, not Saturday night. And so we started discussing the fact that we're doing the live recording. And I mentioned it, of course, to you and see if it was okay with you, Jeff. And then I checked with the lovely bride.
Apparently you didn't understand me when I said no.
Damn it. I must have had too many bourbons already.
Because this David Ogden guy? I said, yes, please don't let him anywhere near your house or your wife, especially.
I know, no kidding. And she's all excited. She's like, wow, we have a guest coming over? Cool. Yeah, right. And the second question out of her mouth, without even on the text, was, does he have a place to stay tonight? I'm like, you haven't even met the guy yet, and you already want to sleep over with him? What's going on here?
Wow. Yeah.
But, man. But so no, got the email and I said, well, here's my number. Text me and we'll get it together. And we figured it out. And he texted me this afternoon. He was driving up to Atlanta, and that's when it dawned on me that it was Friday, not Saturday. So I went ahead and said, "Come on over." So sitting right next to me, David Ogden.
Well, let's
so
hear
I'm
from
gonna
him.
I'm gonna let him say hello.
Well, hello, Jeff. Good to see you again. And I figured that you did you had enough of me here recently with the Houston meetup, so
Yeah, you're
I
right.
didn't I didn't want to oppose on you or impose on you too much, but wanted to reach out to Dana since I was traveling for work here in Georgia, and I'm staying overnight, and I get to fly home really early tomorrow morning. But wanted to pop by and meet Dana if he was available, because I had not had the opportunity to meet him.
Well,
Yeah.
it's going to be a great experience for sure.
Yeah, great. I mean, I'm so glad he reached out. I mean, and I did ask him. I said, "Do you want to meet Jeff?" And he pretty much said he had just seen you. So exactly what you just said. Probably sick of seeing him. So, anyways, great to meet him. He's shows
glad
up at
you're
the
here.
house, and I'm happy to have him.
Great to have you, David. And please feel free to chime in on anything you want if you can add some context or some whatever.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And the one thing I do want to let you know is I was down in Macon, and while I was down there, I took a afternoon to go down to the museum that is at Warner Robins Air Force Base, and saw a couple of airplanes that you might have had some experience on. Got some pictures of a C-141 down there.
Yep.
And saw a T-37, which I believe you might have flown at one point in your flight training.
I have.
I saw a T-38 while we were down there, so got to experience a couple of the aircraft that you have touched in your career.
I thought maybe you were going to say something about that was the basically the origin ground zero for the Huff DeLand crop dusters before they moved to Monroe, Louisiana. I believe, wasn't it Macon?
Yeah, so I'm almost 95% sure.
Yeah,
that's correct.
it had some kind of roots down that way in Georgia. So a lot of the history of Acme Airlines is tied into that area of Georgia. So I thought you were going to say something like the Huff DeLand, whatever that airplane was. It was like an old biplane or high wing, single engine, radial engine airplane, and that you were going to ask me if I flew that. Because that would be funny, because I'm old.
Yeah, well.
Funny to everybody else but me. Okay. Well, great to have you, David. And so let's switch over to Nick. You have the floor, sir.
Well, I don't need the whole floor, so just a little bit of it.
Floor. Okay.
Yeah. Well, the last week has been quite fascinating here in the UK because, of course, it's the 6th of June, the 75th anniversary of the D-Day landings. And being the 75th anniversary, a lot of efforts being made in the UK and France in particular to create a real sense of remembrance and a feeling of gratitude for the few survivors from the Second World War who are still alive, those wonderful veterans. And part of that has been an amazing accomplishment by a bunch of wonderful C-47s, the Douglas Dakota, the American military version of the DC-3, who have flown all the way over from the States to the United Kingdom, which in itself is a pretty epic journey. And they landed at the Imperial War Museum at Duxford and assembled there, and then conducted a series of flights around the UK, some of which included parachute drops, before they participated in the actual D-Day remembrance, the anniversary, by flying reenactment parachutists over to France, where they dropped them in and around the beaches in France. An absolutely fabulous occasion. Now, one of our listeners, Nick Kamachka, has been part of the team that is involved in bringing Betsy's Biscuit bomber, a fantastic C-47, over. And I was lucky enough to get an invitation from Nick to go up and meet him and look over the aircraft at Duxford, just a few days before they embarked on the major flights they did over to France. And I managed to make some recordings, a little snippet, just a taster now. And then I've got 2 plane tales, one of which we'll hear on this show and one on the next show, with the voices of Nick and the chief pilot, Sherman, who were kind enough to give me some of their time. And I'll be able to put some of the photographs I took of Betsy's Biscuit Bomber on the Plain Tales page of our website when we publish those. So that's really quite remarkable. And I think we've got a little bit of audio right now, don't we, Jeff?
Yes, the
He said
C-47
hopefully.
meetup with Nick Camacho and Duxford. Is that it? About 6 minutes? Hello? Hey, can you hear me?
Well, I can now, but you just dropped out for me.
Oh, okay. I said it's the C-47 meetup with Nick Camacho at Duxford.
That's the one, please.
All right. I'll play it right now.
Hi, Jeff. I was lucky enough to be at Duxford yesterday to join friend of the show and longtime listener, Nick Camacho there. He's one of the pilots of Betty's Biscuit Bomber, which is taking part in the Dax over Normandy commemorative squadron of C-47s. Many of these venerable aircraft have flown all the way over from the United States to take part in a number of flypasts and reenactment parachute drops that are happening during this year's 75th anniversary of the D-Day landings. I first asked Nick how he got to become one of our listeners.
Yeah, I listen to I've been listening to podcasts for probably 2009, maybe. I started listening to Jeff actually after Steph was on the Airplane Geeks, because I had been listening to them for a while, and I heard her on there and kind of got turned on to Jeff that way. And so my dad is not a technology guy at all, not a podcast guy. He can't even, figure out how to he struggles sometimes with the voicemail on his iPhone. But since we spend a lot of time together in the hangar, I've started playing some of my aviation related podcasts in there to try to, so I can kind of keep up with things. And he's kind of taken a keen interest in the Airline Pilot Guy show and you and Jeff and everybody involved. So he really likes it.
Now, we're going to hear more from Nick over the next few plane tales, but I wanted to know what Betsy would be doing during the D-Day events over the upcoming days.
So today was supposed to be our big day at Duxford. We did a bunch of flying yesterday, getting all the appropriate European permissions, and some of our pilots had to get formation proficiency checkouts for the CAA. We spent a lot of time before we got here doing formation practice, and a lot of our guys were formation qualified in the United States, but had to do a couple things to get the European authorities to allow us to do what we're trying to do. Today was supposed to be our big Duxford day. Unfortunately, we just got back from the first flight of the day, which was supposed to be a paratrooper drop where we were dropping about 110 jumpers, I think. And unfortunately, the wind was out of limits for the jumpers. So we got up and we got 6 airplanes going around the circuit, but didn't get anybody out. I think they're working on trying to make something happen tonight to get some of the jumpers out of the airplanes. And then tomorrow, which will actually be June 5th, weather permitting, our plan is to fly across the channel early in the morning. We'll land over on the French side, unload our non-essential crew and all of our gear. We'll load the airplane up with our first set of jumpers. We'll take off from France, kick out the first set of jumpers over there, their DZ, and then fly the airplane back to Duxford in the early afternoon. We'll load our second set of jumpers from Duxford, and we'll fly the second set of jumpers back across the channel and do the second drop on their DZ. I believe that the first drop is going to be on the U.S. beaches, and the second drop is going to be on the British beaches, I think. After that, on the 6th, June 6th, the actual commemoration day, I don't think we're doing any paratrooper drops. However, the American contingent that's over here, and some of the European airplanes, I think, are all going to be part of a big formation flyover of the American cemetery in Normandy. That's been a lot of work because there are some very important people that are going to be on the ground there. So it's been a lot of security hoops and that sort of thing to jump through. And we actually did the guys did a practice flight of that yesterday. I was on the ground trying to get some video of them, but they sent up a 14 ship flight with 4 VICs and then 2 trailers at the back, and they all went up and basically practiced their join up and then fly over the cemetery. There's also a cemetery in Cambridge, an American cemetery in Cambridge here, so they basically imitated that whole flight. And so that's what we're doing on the 6th, and then the 7th and 8th, we're doing more paratrooper jumps throughout the French villages and the DZs associated with the Normandy event. And then sometime around the 9th or 10th, many of the aircraft will transition to Germany and then be involved in Germany in some Berlin airlift commemoration events.
Now, that's quite a calendar of events. Now, Nick is a great fan of the show, but has a treat for those who are interested in seeing more of what the crew of Betsy got up to during their visit.
Personally, I enjoy all the content that you guys put out, you and Captain Jeff and Steph and Dana and all the other people involved. And so it's just a privilege for me, and I'm just excited that I can give a little bit back to that. And the only other thing I would say is that we have my other main job besides flying on this trip has been putting a bunch of cameras on the airplane and taking them off. So if anybody else is really interested, they can go look at our Facebook page. And I'm also trying to do a little bit on YouTube and everything. But we have a Facebook page that's called Gooniebird Group - Betsy's Biscuit Bomber. So if you search either one of those, you should be able to find us. And we're trying to put a whole bunch of really cool, kind of unique stuff up there for this trip that we'll probably never be able to do or see again. So I would say maybe check that out. It'd be kind of neat.
Well, it was an enormous treat to get to meet Nick and see the aircraft, and I'm going to be putting some pictures up. And of course, there are plane tales to follow, so I'm very excited about that. And many thanks indeed to Nick and all the rest of the crew of Betsy's Biscuit Bomb.
Kind of getting hungry for some biscuits.
I know. Great name for an aircraft. And Nick was such a generous host. So very kind of you, Nick. I know you're in the chat room. Thank you very much indeed for accommodating me. I know what a busy guy you are now and how many extra jobs you seem to get involved with and helping to organize all the flights and running around. So having me on there on top of that was very kind of you. So that was really my highlight of the last week.
And before you go on,
yeah.
I just want to tell Nick, since he's in the chat room, I'm very disappointed in him. I flew to Wichita on Monday, and I was expecting you and your dad to pick me up, as you did, that time before, and take me back over to Delano's barbecue company. And I waited, and you never showed up, and I'm very, very disappointed. So just wanted to let you know.
Oh dear.
Apparently, you must have been over in the UK or something.
Yeah, he was looking after me, I expect.
Yeah.
That was something I didn't expect, actually, to meet Nick's dad and his brother, who are both there helping out with the team, the whole crew there, who I see one of Nigel's wine glasses. The whole crew there.
It's not one of his, it's mine.
Sorry, everyone. I was just being distracted there by Nigel. Sorry, Jeff quaffing
Whatever.
wine.
I find that a compliment. There we go.
There you go. So it was great to see. I didn't realize the whole family were involved. They're all aviation nuts, so they're absolutely lovely bunch. Yeah. And I love the idea of the fact that when we put out a show, it's going to be played in the hangar where Nick works, so that all the mechanics will be listening to the airline pilot guy.
Oh, cool.
And and that's how his father got to listen. His dad isn't that doesn't actually get as far as downloading it himself, but he now listens with Nick and enjoys the show as well. So lovely to meet you both. It was absolutely brilliant. So next week for me is it's pretty good. I have got just a lot of things that retired pilots do. Plus, I'm off on quite a long drive up to RAF Marham, where actually the F-35 Lightning II's based, or is going to be based very shortly. And I'm lecturing the Royal Aeronautical Society up there on Wednesday. Sadly, I don't think outside people will get the security clearances needed to get onto the base to attend. So that's going to be sort of members only. So sorry about that. And on Friday, I'm going to interview Jeff Lee. Now, Jeff was for many years the chief aviation photographer for British Aerospace. And he is a friend of mine and has agreed to let me chat to him for another plain tale. So really looking forward to seeing Jeff again, not only to catch up with an old friend, but also to listen to some of his stories from the world of aviation. It looks like you're about to get eaten by a jet engine there, Jeff.
Yes. It's right behind me. It's close.
So
Luckily, it's
I'm
off.
looking forward to all that. That's me done and dusted now.
All right. Well, that's excellent. Now, at what point did you want me to play the little special thank you message?
Oh, anytime you want. That's great. No, yeah, because I know there are a lot of people that help contribute towards my retirement party, and I did record a special little thank you. So perhaps it would be appropriate to do that now, if that's
Let's
all right.
do it. Yes.
Hi, everybody. It's Captain Nick here. Now that all the fuss is over, I'm looking back to my last days at work and the wonderful surprise lunch that was thrown for me, and I wanted to tell everyone how profoundly grateful I was for what they did for me. So please indulge me for a moment. Not only did I have a lovely day, I received the most wonderful gift of a model of my 3 favorite aircraft fins. I want to say an enormous thank you to Nige Demery, who also did a lot of the organization, to Adam Spink, who commissioned that fabulous gift, and especially to the generosity of Captain Jeff and the APG crew, Dr. Steph, Captain Dana, and Liz, and my friends David, Abby, Tanya, Tiffany, Myla, Rick Bell, Graham Haley, Phil Davis, Jen, Micah, Dispatcher Mike, who does the Flying and Life podcast, Pilot Pip, and Captain Al from the Plane Safety podcast, Carlos, Matt, and Nev from Plane Talking UK, and of course my lovely wife Jilly. I know that many of you wanted to join me on a final flight, which would have been the most memorable event for me, and I hope a smooth one for you, but it wasn't to be. Let me assure you, though, that the gift plus the lovely cards and good wishes that I've received have more than made up for that last time in the air. You're all wonderful people, and my heartfelt thanks goes out to every one of you.
How nice of you, Captain Nick.
I had to say, there's too many people for me to get around to perhaps write to everyone individually. And for me, since we're podcasters and that's how we are, mate, seemed a much more appropriate way of saying thank you. So that really is a truly heartfelt thank you from me to you, all you wonderful folk.
Excellent. From myself and all of us, you're welcome. You're definitely
Cheers.
worth it. Cheers. Okay. Let's see. Anything else, Captain Nick?
No,
Shall we
sir.
move on?
I'm ready to go to the news.
Well, I have a little, we were talking about on, I don't remember if it was the last show or the one before that, but we were talking about the feedback about somebody being moved from one side of the aircraft to the other because of the oxygen masks. And so 2 things. Well, I'll read this first one. Aaron Black wrote to us via the APG app. And by the way, a little sidebar. The APG app, the push notifications, I know they're not working. We are trying to resolve that issue, and our app guy, we were having difficulty getting in touch with him and hoping that he can fix that for us. And so that's one of those things on the stove that I have to move the pod up to the front and start working on, but I just haven't had a chance to do that. But hopefully we will have that fixed soon. And just wanted to mention that. Aaron Black using the app, which obviously this feedback function of the app is still working. He says, "Hey, ABG crew, new listener from Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, Canada. Current flight attendant with a medium-sized carrier up here, 13 years in, and student pilot working towards PPL and CPL. Wanted to say thank you to all of you for the great work on this podcast. I listen to it on my drive to and from the airport as well as on my commute across the country to and from work. I've learned so much from all of you in the 15 or so episodes I've listened to. I wanted to touch on the 2 feedbacks regarding oxygen masks. As a cabin crew member, we are trained in these systems. At our airline, we operate 737-400s, ATR 42-300/500 aircraft. The 37s are either all passenger or combi, so I guess part passenger and part freight. They are all in a 3 and 3 setup seat-wise. That being said, one aircraft has 4 masks on the starboard side, but only 3 on the port. Only 3 souls can occupy the port side. To avoid confusion and safety issues, our company has trained all reservation agents, ticket agents, and cabin crew that this restriction applies to all 737s in our fleet. Perhaps Southwest Airlines has something similar. The photo I attached is on the forest fire smoke that caused my flights yesterday and today to be canceled. Ooh, sorry to hear that. Fingers crossed that it clears my Sunday so I can do my solo checkout ride. Yeah, I hope so. Thank you all so much for the awesome show. You're welcome. Wishing you clear skies, tailwinds, keep the dirty side down, and may your number of takeoffs always equal your number of landings. Yeah, Steph, you hear that? Cheers, Aaron. Okay, so great. And then I also looked up I finally found it in our volume 2, Dana, that the way the oxygen masks are set up in our jet, no matter what side you're on, whether the 2-seat side or the 3-seat side, so on the 2-seat side, there's always 3 masks. On the 3-seat side, there was always 4. So there's always one more mask per number of seats, if that makes sense. At least that's what my manual says. So I wasn't sure about that, but I did look that up after we discussed it on our show. So, okay. I can't tell if Dana's trying to say something or not because I don't hear anything. Still don't hear anything. It's acting up again, I guess. Nada.
No, that's my fault because I actually put on the electronic mute.
Oh, okay.
So I speaking of looking things up, I looked it up, and I have a trusty manual from Acme Airline.
Masks that we're talking about. What did you look up?
Looking at the first airplane at Acme.
Okay. Oh.
And what it all entailed, and the first airplane that ever was used, the Petrel, Petrel 31. That's and it had a 400 horsepower Liberty 12 engine in it. And it indeed.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yes, of course you did.
When I flew it.
Yes, and when you were out there hand propping it, I remember that you had to do that. So, anyways, seasonal dusting began in Macon first, and then moved on to Monroe, Louisiana. So you were right.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, 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 ding. And the first air service airplane was a Travel Air S6000 Bravo with a Wright J6 Whirlwind 300 horsepower.
I didn't fly that one because I would have been very junior. So
yeah, so
I stayed on the Petrel.
You say with a Petrel.
Yeah.
So I had to look that up. I had the ability to look it up.
I have that same book, Dana, somewhere.
You do?
Yeah, it's probably behind that.
Oh, and not only that, David has a picture on his phone.
Oh yeah,
of the Huff the Land Duster. Let's see if we can get that on the video. There it is. If you can see it now, there it is.
Wow,
awesome. Where did you take that photo, David?
So there happens to be a museum right on the north side of the Atlanta airport that covers the history of Acme Airlines. And that airplane is hanging in that museum. And I happen to hear that museum does an excellent hops in the hangar activity.
Oh, yeah. I know that about that museum. Apparently, I don't know anything else.
You're never sober enough to remember anything else.
They had airplanes in there?
No.
I don't remember that. Okay, excellent. Thank you, David, and thank you, Dana, for looking that up. That's our crack research team, with the emphasis on crack.
Correct.
All right. Okay, let's see.
And
so
he's
that-
not even drinking.
I know. Wow. Gotta love that.
I'm
All
feel-
right.
I'm feeling a little lonely.
Ah, okay. Well, what kind of bourbon are you drinking there, Dana?
I am so excited.
I'm so excited.
Had
Oh,
few for
YouTube's going to bust me now for doing that.
Blanton's. And so went out to dinner on Wednesday night when I was on call, and my buddy that is a manager at the local restaurant that I happen to very much like had remembered that I was collecting the bottle caps, because on the bottle cap of the Blanton's is a horse with a specific letter for each horse in its pose that's ultimately spells out Blanton's. And if you collect all of those caps, which are very hard to come by, then you actually get a plaque with a holder for every single one of those caps. I am now down to just needing the T and the O after I went there on Wednesday night. So he gave me 4 caps. I have 2 in the house. All I need is the T and the O, and I have Blanton's. So that's what I'm drinking. That's that's a very long answer to your question.
Well, it was a good one, though. It was worth every 10 minutes. Okay. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So let's keep moving on, and let's talk about the coffee fund.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
Well, the Coffee Fund is your way to support the show financially. And a couple different ways to do it. The first is called the Coffee Fund Classic Method, where you can set up a recurring payment, as Jason Kuntz, Alistair Kerr, Randolph Ackerman, and Jeff Moeller have done, as well as others. And then it's also your way to send us periodic, individual, one-time only, whatever, contributions. And since the last show, we got a very generous contribution from Magnus Gladen. That's a real bell that I'm ringing there. And he sent us $100. That's why I had to ring the bell. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So, and he sent in an email and said he was feeling bad. And he's already given us some really nice, generous contributions in the past. But he said, no need to feel bad, but I am kind of feeling bad. So if you want to send more, no, I'm just kidding. I did not say that. So there you go. That's the Coffee Fund Classic method. We also have a different way to do it. You can become a patron of the show via Patreon. Patreon.com/Airline Pilot Guy. And the music is running out. Well, since the last episode, we have a couple, 3 actually new producers, and they are Eric Chadwick and Bill Crayon and Michel Deprez, or Michael Deprez. I'm not sure. He's from Australia, and based on his email address anyway. And we also have a new, let's see, that would be the executive producer level. We have Logan Lynch. He went from $1 to $5 per episode. So thank you, Logan, for upping your contributions. And folks out there, up yours. All right. I guess we can now move on. Oh, wait, hang on. Just today, actually. Before we started recording the show, I received notification that we have yet another new executive producer, and his name is Dave Lakeland. So there you have it. A couple new executive producers. We have 3 new producers. And if you want to join the Coffee Fund, or what do you call it, Nick? The Coffee Fund, Coffee Bar Fund? I don't know. The thing where you give us financial support.
I call it what comes to mind.
Okay. And if you want to join that great gang of people and get the perk of receiving periodic crew logs, which we published one today, Nick did one for us, and you should check out airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. You'll be glad you did, and so will we.
Brilliant.
Stand by for news.
Thank you, Paul Harvey. Paul Harvey. Good day.
Now you know the rest of the story.
Now you know the rest of the story.
I used to love listening.
Yeah, great. He is just such a great radio, or was such a great radio broadcaster.
Was exactly.
Yeah.
And I always, when I try to explain what Plain Tales is like to people, I explain, if you ever heard the rest of the story, Paul Harvey.
Yeah.
I
Nick, have
kinda-
you ever heard Paul Harvey's The Rest of the Story?
No.
Oh, man, we got to figure out a way for you to listen to those.
Yeah,
You
because
would-
it's almost like Nick's Plain Tales.
Yeah, it was always like a little twist, though, at the end.
Am I in competition with this man?
You're better.
Well, yeah, you and he's gone anyway. So, but,
that's all right
rest
then.
in peace. Yes.
That's it. Yep, definitely.
Okay. All right. Let's start with the first item in the news folder. Not a good story. This is from WSB Radio, a great radio station here in Atlanta. A man mauled by another passenger's emotional support, or would it be mauled? How would you say that in Britain?
Mauled.
Mauled. A man mauled by another passenger's emotional support dog.
I wouldn't say it that
I know,
way,
I didn't
but-
do it quite right. On a Delta Airlines flight has sued the airline and the other passenger for negligence. The lawsuit filed in Fulton County State Court, I live in Fulton County, alleges Marlon Jackson was in a window seat when a dog sitting in the lap of the passenger next to him suddenly attacked his face and pinned him against the window of the plane. The June 2017 attack during boarding of a flight from Atlanta to San Diego gained national attention. I don't even remember this actually, and was followed by a series of changes to airline policies for emotional support and service animals. The federal government is also reviewing its policies for emotional support and service animals on flights. Quote, while Mr. Jackson was securing his seatbelt, the animal began to growl at him, according to the lawsuit. The dog then bit Jackson several times. That would make me feel uncomfortable if the dog was growling. The attack was briefly interrupted when the animal was pulled away from Mr. Jackson. However, the animal broke free again and mauled Mr. Jackson's face. Jackson, who lives in Alabama, quote, bled so profusely that the entire row of seats had to be removed from the airplane, according to the complaint. He suffered lacerations and punctures to his face and upper body, requiring 28 stitches and medical treatment. The lawsuit also alleges Jackson suffered permanent injury and loss of sensation in areas of his face, severe physical pain and suffering, emotional distress, mental anguish, loss of income, and or earning potential, and substantial medical bills. His entire lifestyle has been severely impaired by this attack, the litigation states. Anyway, Delta, the suit alleges, took no action to verify or document the behavioral training of a large animal or of the large animal, such as requiring signed documentation showing the animal is trained and can behave in the airplane setting. Such measures were feasible at the time, but were not in effect until after his attack. Anyway, so it goes on. We'll have the rest of that article in the show notes. But wow, that's not a good thing.
It's
to
not.
be attacked like that.
This is quite dreadful. But we forget that if the passenger requires emotional support because it becomes agitated and worried about the thought of flying, not every animal is going to be passive and put in exactly the same situation of the unfamiliar surroundings, the very crowded environment inside a cabin. It's hardly surprising that some dogs are not suited to be in that environment, and they themselves can feel threatened, and this is quite a likely reaction. So the dog may not have been suitable as an emotional support animal, and certainly putting it in that environment was extremely unfair on the animal, and ultimately very dangerous for the poor passenger that was attacked. So I've very little sympathy for the dog owner, and not a lot of sympathy for the airline, because just allowing anyone with any kind of a document that, or just even saying, "Oh, I need this animal for emotional support," doesn't really prove that it's fit and safe to have it on an aircraft.
Yeah, and that's why Delta was one of the first that to come up with very strict guidelines regarding emotional support animals. They're still allowed, but they have to be, certain rules have to be followed. And yes, there are still people out there cheating because Dana and I see them all the time, especially the ones that are supposed to be like the regular, what do you call it, service animals, and they're dragging their owner through the airport. I'm thinking, I don't think a service animal would act that way. So, I know that there's a lot of cheating going on there, but they were kind of between a rock and a hard place because if they say absolutely no emotional support animals, then they're going to get lawsuits from people because they're saying, well, I should have the right to have an emotional support animal. So, I don't know exactly, what to do in this situation.
The whole situation's run amok, in my opinion, because it sounds like from the original. I remember when this happened, and from the original situation, now it's litigious. Litigious.
He got it.
Did I say it right?
Yes.
The way this is written, of course, and that's because now the lawyers are involved. I just think a lot of people just want to have a free ride with their animals. Didn't want to have them put in the cargo compartment, have to pay for it, and or have to pay for a cabin animal. Which for years, I traveled with my dog all the time. She was in the kennel underneath the seat in front of me. Even as a non-rev, I had to pay. So motion support,
yeah, like $100 or something, I think.
I
think we picked up some cats in San Antonio, and it was I don't know exactly how much it was.
It varied. It went from like 50 to 75
Okay.
to 100, and it was. I can't remember all the times that we took her home, but the moral of the story is that how can a airline be culpable for a documented animal? I mean, if somebody says I have an emotional support animal and they have a note from a doctor, how do you argue? I mean, in a court of law, how do you argue that?
I know.
You can't.
Well, the doctor hasn't assessed the animal's suitability. That's how you argue it. I mean, the doctor says
not under U.S. law, my friend.
His patient may require an emotional support animal. It's up to the patient to acquire one that is fit to fly on an airplane and be in the close quarters of a crowded cabin. So I don't think that's the doctor's point. I think the emphasis is on the patient who gets the animal to get a suitable one.
Well, being that said, then there are service animals that are certified to be service animals, and I agree with you. But here in the United States of America, with our legal system, you're kind of damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Yeah. Right. So, as Jeff alluded to, is if you go ahead and you say to that passenger, say, hey, no, we don't have proper documentation. It doesn't meet with our standards. Who we as airline people to judge whether an animal is properly trained?
Yeah.
We can't just say no, because and we talked about this, I don't know how many episodes ago, and I think I was corrected on it, but the ADA, right, gets involved, and there's all types of legal situations you can get into. And if somebody declares they have a service animal that is in emotional support, how do you not allow them on the airplane? Because
in the UK, we only allow very few organizations to, and they're extremely well trusted, to certify that the animal is what it says it is. And those organizations require the animals to be properly trained, like seeing eye dogs, which go through rigorous training to make sure they're absolutely suitable. And those kind of support animals, not just any therapist or any organization that has been dreamt up on the internet or wherever it comes from.
But legally here in the United States, we would, if you have a doctor that signs a document that says this person needs an emotional support animal, doesn't matter what the training is, right? We are, as an airline, Acme, are required to go ahead and honor that doctor's note and allow that person to have that emotional support.
I mean, we
Support
agree
animal.
with you. We wish that there were some more strict regulations regarding this,
Right.
but we can't here in our country.
Well, it
Main
seems
man-
that the airline now has introduced much stricter regulations, though. So presumably, it could have done that right at the beginning, could it not?
I suppose so. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not in touch with the legal department of this airline, so I don't know exactly what. I do know that.
That's the point I'm getting at. Really,
Yeah,
is that
but
it's-
for many years, though, Nick, our company, which is very similar to Delta Airlines, would rather their legal department, when they have lawsuits filed, they found it just more expeditious and cheaper just to pay settlements to all these people instead of taking it into the legal system, which is disgusting, because some of the lawsuits against the airline were so ridiculous that you'd say, well, just for the principle of this, I would fight it. But they found that economically speaking, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
So
it's a shame, isn't it?
it is.
Well,
There
here,
you go.
Stephanie Dr. Steph just chimed in. Online psychiatrists sign off on the need for an emotional support animal.
Yeah, well, that's exactly my
That's
point.
wrong. Yeah.
Wrong.
But having said that, so the patient needs it, but it's still, you need someone else to say this animal is suitable. I don't think unless the patient has
We
a
all
problem
agree.
with
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I say
The animal has to
keep
have
all the
training.
animals off the airplane.
I mean, I could have very easily had my friend who's a psychiatrist go ahead, and not that I know, it's just a personal friend from social groups, write me a letter saying that my Misty, my dog, she's my emotional support animal, and put a vest on her, and she wouldn't hurt a flea or a fly, right? And say that she can come on the airplane with me. That way I could avoid paying the $50 or $75 or $100. And little 11-pound dog, what's she gonna do? I mean, she wasn't a vicious little thing, but that's just the point I'm making, is that anybody can get that.
Yeah. I think we've probably covered this enough now.
Yeah, I think we've. I think I hear the horse kind of breathing its last.
Yeah, I'm gonna shut up.
So and there's quite a spirited discussion in the chat room, and yeah, it's one of those things that makes everybody excited. So probably best for us just to leave it as is and move on. We have some updates from some previous accidents that we've talked about on the show, and I've combined them all in this second news item. We'll start with the Embraer ERJ 190LR that was having some maintenance work performed on it in Lisbon, Portugal. And on May 31st, GPIAAF, whatever that stands for, Portugal, published in their investigation update, reported that a detailed examination of the aircraft flight control showed an incorrect ailerons control cable system installation. Basically, bottom line, well, here, I'll read a little bit more. A modification carried out in accordance with Embraer Service Bulletin, blah, 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 changed a cable routing support near rib 21 of the aircraft. This change made it harder to understand the maintenance instructions and spot reversed aileron cables. During maintenance, the engine indicating and crew alerting system, EICAS or ICAS, displayed a caution message, flight control no dispatch. Meant that one of the components of the flight control system had failed. Troubleshooting activities by the maintenance service providers supported by the aircraft manufacturer lasted 11 days. However, the ailerons cables reversal was not identified in this period. Also, prior to departure, the ailerons incorrect operation caused by the control cable's reversal was not identified in the aircraft operational checks, the flight controls checks by the operator crew. That's not good. So
that's terrifying.
That's yeah.
If you're doing a check ride on an aircraft that's had a flight control problem,
I know
you wouldn't correctly do a control check.
That would have been the safeguard right there, right? That would be the thing that would have.
Yeah, your last chance to catch it.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so they were doomed, although they somehow figured it out and got it under control. and got the airplane on the ground just miraculously. Really, I mean that should have been another complete loss of aircraft and life, and they managed to get it on the ground. And I can't, just your brain probably wouldn't compute like why I'm turning this way, but the airplane's going the other, big mess. The other one,
Fortunately, they were pretty smart and figured it out, though.
they finally did. There's a lot more to it. I'll put the whole report in the show notes, and it goes through the G forces, excessive G forces they experienced while they were trying to gain control of the airplane, and they disconnected the flight control computers and were just basically flying in direct law or direct mode. And were able to finally stabilize the aircraft enough so they could kind of control it enough to get it on the ground. In fact, the last landing attempt, I think it was their third landing attempt, they were able to get the aircraft landing on the runway, and they were shooting for one of the runways, but they actually landed on the parallel runway. So, but good thing there was a parallel runway. Yeah. All right. Next is the accident, the Aeroflot Su-95 at Moscow on May 5th, 2019. The one that landed and really pranged it on and collapsed the main landing gear. And several people died because of that accident. Also the one where several people grabbed their luggage and before they left the airplane.
That's not a news folder.
Yeah, it's part of the second item B, that I'm looking at here.
Let me see.
On May 18th, 2019, Rosaviatsia reported that the captain, 43 years old, he was had 6,844 hours total, so 1,570 hours on type, was assisted by first officer, 36 years old, 773 hours total, 623 hours on type. They were about 30 to 40 kilometers, 16 to 21 nautical miles west of the Sheremetyevo airport. There was rain in clouds. The clouds extended. Vlad, if you're listening, Vlad, the controller, our friend that lives in and works in Moscow, he did record some of these names for me. I just hadn't had a chance to fix the files yet, so maybe I'll do that in post. Anyway, there was rain in clouds. The clouds extended to a height of 8,000 to 9,000 meters and contained a thunderstorm. The aircraft was climbing through 7,900 feet at 1508Z when an electrical failure occurred. The flight control system degraded to direct mode. The autopilot automatically disconnected. The aircraft was in the middle of thunderstorm activity. The captain assumed manual control of the aircraft until the end of the flight. Radio communication that had taken place on VHF-1 radio so far became unavailable. The crew was able to partially restore communication via VHF-2, the second radio, on the emergency frequency only. The crew set the squawk for a loss of communication. The crew decided to return to the airport and perform a manual ILS approach to runway 24 left. At the time, the aircraft intercepted the glide slope. The aircraft's mass was 42,600 kilograms, which was 1,600 kilograms above the maximum landing weight. The crew deployed the flaps to 25 degrees in accordance with the flight crew operating manual for flight with minimum mode, which is direct mode, of the flight control system, as well as landing above maximum landing weight. The crew set the emergency transponder. Okay. The approach speed was determined to be 155 knots indicated. The descent on the glide slope was stabilized and without any deviation from the derived velocity approach, the approach speed. Winds during the approach came from 190 degrees at 30 knots, descending between 1,100 and 900 feet. The crew received 5 cycles of predictive wind shear warnings. Wind shear ahead, go around. Descending through 260 feet AGL, the aircraft began to deviate below the glide slope. A glide slope warning occurred. Descending between 180 to 40 feet, the engine thrust was increased, causing the aircraft to accelerate to 164 knots. At 16 feet above ground level, the speed was 170 knots. A terrain awareness warning system oral signal retard occurred. The engine thrust was reduced to idle. At that point, the captain began to apply oscillating pitch inputs with increasing amplitude, which changed the pitch angle up to +6 and -2 degrees. The aircraft made a 3-point touchdown 900 meters past the runway threshold at 158 knots and a vertical load of 2.55 Gs, bounced up to 6 feet. The spoilers did not deploy in direct mode. They are not permitted to operate automatically, and they need to be extended manually. However, the spoilers were not manually extended by the crew. 2 seconds after the first touchdown, the aircraft touched down a second time with the nose gear first at 155 knots and plus 5.85 Gs. That's a lot of G-force there. That's a hard landing. The aircraft bounced off again to 18 feet. A third touchdown occurred at 140 knots in excess of 5 Gs, resulting in the destruction of the construction of the airplane, a fuel spill, and fire. While the aircraft was skidding along the runway at 100 knots, a first fire alarm triggered in the aft cargo compartment. 16 seconds later, in the tail section of the aircraft came to a in 16 seconds, they got another fire warning in the tail section of the aircraft. The aircraft came to a stop 20 seconds after the first fire alarm. 40 seconds after the first fire alarm, the fire extinguisher in the tail section was activated. The engines continued to run until the end of the flight data recording. The MAK is conducting the investigation, which focuses also on the predictive wind shear alerts and the reaction to them. Yeah, so when we hear wind shear ahead, go around, we go around. Obviously, what it was looking at, the predictive wind shear system uses radar and to scan ahead of the aircraft. And when you receive that kind of predictive wind shear warning, that means there's something dark red right in front of you in the path of the aircraft. And they apparently ignored it and continued to do their landing. So it looks like they're the MAK reported the preliminary report of more than 100 pages has been drafted and is currently being proofread. It's estimated to be released in the coming days. So there you have the update so far on the Moscow crash of the Su-95 or Super 100 or whatever they're calling it. Those G-forces are just wow. Yeah. Crazy. Anything to say before I hit the next?
I mean, this is what scares me. I mean, look at that. He got hired with 150 hours. Yeah. 773 hours total, 623 hours on type.
That's for the co-pilot, yeah.
The co-pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know. I mean, it doesn't say here who was flying, does it? Did I miss it?
I think no, I don't know if it does say who was flying.
Yeah, I don't think it does say who was
the captain.
Yeah. I mean, I would be assuming that's captain, but you never know. I mean, 773 total hours, 623 hours on type doesn't tell me that they have a whole lot of experience. And this is what actually kind of scares me for what's coming down.
I know.
The pipe,
I know. This is going to be a common theme, Dana, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. So that's all
and you can, sort of in this last thing that I have in this update folder or update note is the Miami Air Boeing 737-800 at Jacksonville Naval Air Station on the 3rd of May. They ran, it was a runway overrun on landing, and they ended up in the river. In late May, the NTSB released an investigative update stating that the approach control had advised the crew that both runways looked pretty bad and were socked in, which means, for us, that means not good, really bad weather. Winds favored runway 28. However, as the aircraft came closer, Tower queried whether the crew wanted runway 10 as it was looking better. I don't know if that means wind-wise or because of the severe thunderstorm cells or what. It doesn't say here. The crew accepted runway 10. Tower reported the winds from 240 degrees at 10 knots when he cleared the flight to land. The aircraft touched down about 1,600 feet past the displaced threshold of the runway 10, and that's not bad, actually. Runway 10, about 20 feet to the right of the runway center line, returned onto the center line about 10 or 1,000 feet further down the runway, then veered right again and was 75 feet right of the runway, already off the runway about 6,200 feet past the threshold. and struck a rock embankment. The captain, who had 7,500 hours total, 3,000 on type, that's considerably good experience, therefore 1,000 hours in command, was assisted by a first officer, 7,500 hours total, 18 hours on type. The NTSB wrote the accident flight was part of an operating experience trip. You know, here the term used, in fact, Dana used it earlier, OE or IOE, operational experience is what that stands for, right? OE.
Operational experience.
Operating experience.
Or
Like
initial.
Yeah.
IOE is
initial operating experience.
and OE is operating experience.
Yeah. Let's see. The accident flight was part of an operating experience trip for the first officer that began the day before the accident. On the day of the accident, the crew operated a flight from KNIP to MUGM, which I think is Jacksonville Naval Air Station, down to Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, then operated the return flight to Jacksonville Naval Air Station, where that was the accident flight. So that's the update on that so far. So, comments?
Well, those guys have plenty of experience.
Yeah. 7,500 hours is a lot of experience for both of them. Now, of course, the captain had a lot more experience on this particular airplane, and obviously the first officer did not. He was on his OE. So, but again, I don't know. I don't recall if they said on the earliest report, or in this one they didn't, who was actually at the controls, who was flying the airplane at the time. But yeah, so I'm not sure here that lack of experience is a factor, but I think that there are a lot of things happening now that kind of point to that, to me anyway. And I share Dana's concern that this is going to be something that's going to be a problem now and into the future. Not sure how to fix it, but there it is. Okay, moving on to item C. Colonel Jeff and Janelle Egan. I think Janelle, is she still in the chat room with us? We haven't seen her in a while. Anyway, she wrote in, or actually they both wrote in. Actually, they just kind of asked us to talk about these articles. The first one from Seattle Times. The Federal Aviation Administration on Sunday issued a statement alerting airlines and international aviation regulators that certain wing parts on more than 300 Boeing 737s may have been improperly manufactured and must be replaced within 10 days. Both older model 737 NGs and new 737 MAXs are affected, and there appears to be no connection with the recent fatal MAX crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia. The FAA said the parts in question are the slat track assemblies used to guide the movable control surfaces on the leading edge of an airplane's wing that deploy during takeoff and landing, actually before takeoff and during takeoff and before landing. Manufactured by a Boeing sub-tier supplier, a batch of about or up to 148 parts with specific lot numbers are affected. Because the parts have been improperly manufactured, they may not meet regulatory requirements for strength and durability. The affected parts may be susceptible to premature failure or cracks, the FAA said, although a complete failure of a leading edge slat track would not result in the loss of an aircraft. A risk remains that a failed part could lead to aircraft damage in flight. And let's see, that goes on. Let's move down to the next one from Business Insider. Boeing's nightmare year gets even worse as it admits hundreds of planes, including 159 737 MAXs, may have defective parts on their wings. And so it basically kind of reiterates what we just read in the previous article. So yeah, more woes for the manufacturer of many airplanes out there, that Boeing, that they didn't need, and looks like one of their third-party parts suppliers sent them badly manufactured parts that they install on these airplanes. So
I wonder if, number one, the FAA feeling they might have been let down by Boeing concerning the MCAS problem, are now zeroing in and starting to look at everything that they might be concerned about, and are starting to pick up a few other things, some of which may not be entirely justified, but now they feel like they have to.
Yeah.
That's question number one. And question number two I have, because I'm not that familiar with Boeing, how much of their work is subcontracted? And I wonder what procedures they have to
Quality control.
QA,
Yeah.
the subcontractors, because it doesn't seem to be the Boeing self-manufactured bits or their systems. It's people who they have contracted this work out to that are letting them down.
Right. Including the people that did the software for the MCAS.
Yeah.
But, Boeing obviously shares a lot of blame in that whole thing. And we're not going to talk about that right now because we've talked about that quite a bit already. But, I agree with you, Nick. I'm sure that, we've seen this. You have, Nick, Dana has, a lot of you listening. When an airline has some issues, all of a sudden the FAA is like on you, like giving you all kinds of attention that you don't want. and they may actually be a little bit more particular than they normally would. And not saying that this is not, warranted. This I'm sure is. You never want an airplane flying around with parts that are substandard, not meeting specs.
No, exactly right.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's a continuation of the same.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say anything.
Well, hey, if that wasn't worse or bad enough, finally, item D, the FAA finds Boeing 787 jets, wheels, and tires could lose braking and steering function. Now, we're not talking about the 73 this time. We're talking about the 787, the Dreamliner. Boeing has been hit by new safety concerns affecting two further plane models. Okay, we talked about one of the concerns, the 737 slat tracks. This involves the 787 Dreamliner, and they could be susceptible to damage, which could result in a loss of braking on one main landing gear truck, loss of nose wheel steering, and loss of directional control on the ground when below the rudder effectiveness speed, which is basically the same thing. If you don't have nose wheel steering, once you're below the rudder effectiveness speed, the only thing that's keeping you going straight or whichever way you're trying to make the airplane go, you've lost because you don't have nose wheel steering. As I mentioned, I think I mentioned on the PTUK, we talked about the same thing. I believe I remember reading something about this months back, and the fact that they were going to have to do something to fix this, and they did on the production models that occurred after the point that they knew that this was an issue. But I guess there's some still out there flying that have this susceptibility to damage of basically hydraulic lines that are exposed on the main landing gear trucks. And when you lose the hydraulic system to the braking system of the airplane and the nose wheel steering system, it's not a good thing. So they put out a directive to compel operators to make the required repairs on affected aircraft already in use in their fleets. So again, a lot of attention, probably warranted, but more bad news for Boeing aircraft. So,
hi, Steph.
Oh, look at that! Thank you very much. I wasn't looking at the.
Hi.
Hey, Steph. Oh, get the microphone. That never happens.
I was fixing it while I was listening to you guys.
Still your computer mic. But you sound great anyway. So
be right back. There's only one way to fix this.
Okay, when she comes back, we're going to hear something that sounds a lot like this. And you know what? I love that. That is an original. Sounds like what is the series called? ER.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I used to enjoy that.
Yes, and do you know who did that for us, Captain Nick?
Steph.
Better.
No? Yeah. Right. Yep. You're on it.
I changed nothing.
Yeah. Okay. That's audio for you.
Yeah.
So I was just talking about your theme song. our good friend and APG community member and one of the great co-hosts of the Plain Talking UK, Neville Bounds, is the one who actually created this original music for us. So we can play it all darn day long, and YouTube can't do anything about it because it's not a copyright violation. All right, here we go. Well, looky who is there just now joining us from her lakeside cottage in South Carolina. Shoot.
You don't have your notes in front of you, do you?
Well, I can tell you, it doesn't matter all the things that there's so many things that she does so well. It doesn't matter. But she's a skydiver, and she's IPA connoisseur, and she's a strength training junkie, and she flies airplanes. She's a commercial multi-engine instrument rated pilot. But the best thing is that she is a great person and our friend, Dr. Steph.
And I finally made it.
Yes.
The show with
Yay.
you all.
Yeah.
Yay.
Well, just a little bit past the half hour. I mean, the halfway
point.
Yeah.
No, that was not my intention at all. I apologize.
So what's going on with you? A little stress?
I'm not stressed.
Yeah.
No, there's no reason.
She's got a beer in her hand now. She's not stressed at all.
I haven't been actually. To be fair, I've not felt stressed all day because there's not much you can do about it.
Oh, I love your attitude.
Deal with it and move on.
There you go, folks.
So
that's the kind of attitude to have.
And right anymore, I'd like to say that I'm surprised at some of the things that seem to happen just in the working environment. But I'm not.
Oh, the humanity.
They used to, those things used to disappoint me. Just expect it anymore. So
well,
anyway, without getting into any specifics,
I'm sorry you had a bad day.
It's been a long after. Well, yeah. I mean, the day itself was actually pretty good. Like the schedule was good. Not the schedule. I'll take that back. The patients were good. The procedures were good. People were feeling better for the most part today. That when I saw people in follow up, and sometimes just can't get our act together in other ways. When one part is going well, other things are not going well. This was all purely administrative, which is, I won't get on that soapbox right now because I could go on for a very long time, and that would just be
we just don't have enough time for that.
It could be a separate podcast in and of itself, probably on a daily basis.
Yeah.
For several hours. So there you go.
Oh, well.
Anyway, it ended with me being up on the other side of Charlotte this afternoon, far away from where I actually normally work, and far away from where I actually live.
How's the weather up there?
Terrible. Not good.
Not good.
Actually, it's fine.
Did you have your roof on the Jeep?
Yes. Well, so funny story about that. They've been forecasting this rain all week. Well, starting on Wednesday, really. And I did not have the roof on the Jeep. I'd taken it off last week when it was nice and sunny and no chance of rain. And I woke up on Wednesday morning, kind of late for work, unfortunately, because it's been a busy week in general. And I was, trying to squeeze in every little last drop of sleep that I could for the evening, for the morning anyway. And I got up and I turned on the weather and went, oh, shoot, I forgot it's really supposed to rain today. They're calling for these afternoon thunderstorms. I really should put the top back on the Jeep because it's going to pour and I'll just be caught out in it. And I was already running late. I was like, I don't have to do this myself. So it took me about 15 minutes to manage to get it all back together, and actually made it to work on time still too.
Wow. That's fast.
You know what it didn't do on Wednesday? It did not rain on Wednesday. Well, it's like, okay, that's fine because they're calling for the same thing on Thursday. You know what it didn't do on Thursday?
It didn't rain.
Did not rain on Thursday.
Please don't tell me you took the top off.
I did not take the top off.
Okay.
They're forecasting it clear through like next Wednesday, so I'd be an idiot to do that. But today it did show up as forecast, and it was raining quite hard up on the north side of Charlotte. It's not really raining here, but because I was in a little bit of a hurry, I did not stop to grab my umbrella on the way into the building earlier today, even though it was raining at that time too. And then it was raining even harder for me to cross the parking lot on my way back. So I got.
Looks like your hair is a little bit wet.
It is. I'm not sure what to do. It's just terrible right now. It's just like matted to my head. Like,
fine. Just like, yeah.
I'm surprised it's not just like super frizzy and.
All you hairy people don't understand how nice it is not to have hair because it's dry instantaneously.
I should just shave my head, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Excellent.
Go for it.
I don't. I wouldn't vote for that.
No, I wouldn't do that.
It would be easier. Just, I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
worry about it for running or for swimming or for. I'd have to apply more sunscreen though.
Is that your garage door, Dana, or is that Captain Nick making that horrible sound?
I think that's Captain Nick.
But it sounds just like the garage door, actually.
That sounds like his B.O.B.
That's the electric roof on my Audi.
Oh, that's nice. Your car has an electric roof. That must be nice. Mine
so-
does not.
Yeah,
I have a hand crank in my garage to use the lift for it. It took 15 minutes.
I was going to ask you, don't they sell Audis in America?
You know, I hear they do.
They do. Yes.
Okay.
So anyway,
the first officers I fly with that
Okay.
shave their heads
Mhm.
or bald, they like get up 15 minutes before signing.
yeah, I know. That's what I'm
They
saying.
don't have
Like,
to do
why
anything.
am I spending all my
Give it a
time
quick
getting my
polish.
hair together in the morning for just to rain all over it and, be sloppy and a mess? Anyway, a quick public service announcement. If you drive a vehicle and it's raining outside, even if it's daylight, please, please, please just turn your lights on as well.
Yes. It's a state law, I think, in most
It is
states.
state law in most states. It is in
Yeah.
North Carolina
All our
and South
listeners
Carolina.
know that. All our listeners are beautiful and brilliant.
Yeah,
I
that's
hope so,
right.
because I would say about half the people on the road today in pouring rain with poor visibility.
Well,
even though
we
it's
don't
daylight
want
hours.
them to listen.
Yeah. If that's
they
you,
don't
you can just take your listenership or stay with us and maybe just turn your lights on,
Turn your lights on, yeah.
please,
Just turn your darn lights on.
please.
I know.
I did witness a very almost kind of comical accident in a parking lot too on the way home today, so that was kind of funny. I just don't even know what to say about some of this stuff. It's like,
Well, I think, the people that don't turn the lights on, they're thinking, well, I don't need to turn the lights on because I can see just fine.
well, I'm wondering if it's
not because
yeah,
you
no,
can't
not
see.
I can't see you. I can't see you.
You need to be
please.
seen by everybody else.
You look at your rearview mirror and you're like, well, there's no one behind me. Then you're like, wait a minute, there's like 5 cars behind me. None of them have their lights on.
Oh gosh.
Very frustrating.
Well,
Anyway.
we're so happy that you're with
Also,
us.
if you're making a right-hand lot, probably stay, at least in the United States where we drive on the right side of the road, you want to stay to the right, because if there's a car waiting to exit the parking lot on what is their right side of the road, and you continue but go on the left side, which is where that car already is, you're probably going to run into them. Just saying.
That was a little
just-
US/UK confusion going on there.
I that's the only thing I could come up with. I'm like, this guy has been somewhere overseas driving
He's
on the
just
left
back
side of the
from London.
just really not sure which side of the parking lot the car that was waiting to leave was already occupying that spot, so you'd
Mhm.
think anyway, that was it was actually kind of funny.
Well,
Anyway,
there you go.
I feel a little sorry for the guy sitting there. So. What else? Gosh, I don't know. It's been a week.
Any meetups or flying or I think you
Not flying. I was
did
doing
some
some
skydiving,
skydiving
right?
last
Yeah.
weekend. That was fun. Been a while since I'd been up.
Mhm.
But did a couple of nice jumps. It was the big yearly boogie. So skydiving get-togethers. When they organize and have a lot of people come in from all over the country, they call them a boogie. And this was the yearly one where I jump, and it was great fun because they have folks come in who help organize jumpers, so you can jump with them, and they will, make the jump as fun as possible and organize you based on skill level and what everyone wants to do, and it usually turns out pretty well. So that was fun.
Very cool.
And probably not going to do much of anything this weekend in terms of flying and or jumping because the rain is supposed
Weather's
to
bad.
continue. The weather's going to be poor. Seems like a theme this year and end of last year, like a broken record. Nice during the week, terrible weather on the weekend. But hopefully some flying adventures to come.
Good.
In the works. So stay tuned for that.
Very, very good. Well, we have made it through the news folder stuff.
I noticed, yes.
We are about to start the feedback.
Excellent.
Okay. So are you ready for that?
Oh, I'm ready.
Okay.
Captain, incoming message.
We better hurry because soon it's going to be time for the installment of Plain Tales. So let's knock out item 1 in the feedback folder from VC10 Ron. What would you do He says, after reading the American Airlines plane that had an emergency landing with a blown tire, it got me thinking. If any of you had a blown tire at takeoff, would you call it an emergency and land back at the airfield, or would you just carry on to your destination and land there? The second option doesn't inconvenience the customers as much, I guess. Is there a certain protocol you have to follow, or is it entirely the captain's choice? Just interested. Thanks, VC10 Ron. VC10, by the way, is a mid-sized, narrow-body, long-range British jet airliner designed and built by Vickers Armstrong's Aircraft Limited, and first flown at Brooklands, Surrey, in 1962.
And by my father not long after that.
Excellent. And I remember seeing that. Nav took me to the Brooklands, and I think it was Brooklands Air Museum, wasn't it? Or I think that was where he took me. Anyway, great airplane. The article to which he is referring is an incident, an American 737-800 at Kingston, Jamaica, and Miami on May 7th, 2019. Tire damage on departure, hydraulic leak on landing. This 737-800 was flying from Kingston to Miami with 172 passengers and 6 crew. They were climbing out of Kingston when the crew was informed that debris had been found on the departure runway. A tire damage was suspected. The crew decided to continue to Miami, performed a low approach to runway 9 to have the tires inspected from the ground, which confirmed a tire was damaged. The crew positioned for another approach to runway 9, landed about 10 minutes after the low approach. The aircraft was disabled due to the tire damage and a hydraulic leak at the left main gear and was subsequently towed to the apron. VC10 Ron is asking us, so is this, what would you do in this situation? And so from what I can gather from the report on the Aviation Herald is that they, performed their takeoff. They retracted the gear. The gear is all retracted. The gear doors are closed. And then they find out from Tower or whoever informed them, air traffic control, that they suspected that they may have tire damage. Nick, what would you do?
Well, once the gear is up, you've gone through that danger period, because if you have a blown tire in that initial part of the takeoff, of course, the flailing rubber can cause damage. And when you try and lift the gear, the loose rubber hanging out can jam the doors, etc., and cause problems inside the landing gear bay. But once it's up, if there are no faults indicated, then you've kind of got away with that bit, and there's no real decision, because the gear's up and tucked away. Now all you got to worry about is the landing, and the next question is, where's the best place to do the landing? Well, quite honestly, have been flown into Kingston, Jamaica, and Miami. I'd much rather be in Miami, thank you very much. The runways are longer, they've got better firefighting facilities. It's where you want to go anyway. It's probably where your engineering is. There's currently no danger to the aircraft, certainly if you've got no indications of warning or hydraulic leaks or hydraulic failures. So I think that's an entirely sensible decision, and I would have done exactly what this captain did.
Yep. Agree completely. Now, if you experience a tire failure before you retract the gear, or if you're aware of it and thinking, oh, something's wrong with the tires or the landing gear system, then probably the toughest thing to do is to resist the urge to put the gear handle up, just like, okay, let's leave the gear down. And then, you can bring it back to where you took off, or if you might need to go out and burn off some fuel, or if you have an airplane that has fuel dumping capability, you would do that to lower the weight of the aircraft. But as Captain Nick said, if in this situation, you've already gone through that, you've passed that time frame where everything is retracted, and you might as well take it to somewhere that you have the best facilities to handle the situation. Runway 9 at Miami, as Nick knows and Dana and I know, is a very long runway, and it's a very wide runway as well. So it's probably the best place to put that airplane down in this particular situation.
Yeah, I mean, as far as it, if it was me, I would evaluate several things. I would think about where I am, as far as the landing. I don't think I want to go back into Kingston. It's actually kind of a shorter runway.
Yeah, you
And
like where you want to lay over and what
yeah,
the food is
yeah,
like.
well,
and so forth.
those things. But
Yeah.
maintenance services available. Replacement. And my biggest thing is have the flight tank go look at the wing and look at my engine instruments, and if everything is all normal, seeming to be normal, and when I look at my engine instruments, of course I'm going to check the hydraulics, I'm going to check the oil, I'm going to check make sure my all my temperatures and my rotations and everything else are all normal. If I'm looking at all that, that's all the things I'm going to take into consideration. And if the airplane's flying normal and there's no apparent really emergent damage to the aircraft, then I would agree with both Nick and Jeff. I'm going to take the aircraft probably to its destination, unless it's a remote place. If I'm taking off from someplace like Atlanta and I'm going to Madison, Wisconsin, I might think otherwise, because obviously it's a shorter runway. They don't have the maintenance services, so I'd probably turn around in that case. But in this exact scenario, I would have done the exact same thing.
I think we all agree that we would have done exactly what this crew did. I was looking at our QRH under tire failures, and if the landing gear is retracted,
The better emergency services.
I'm sorry, I missed the button. We're actually discussing it.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
We're talking about the exact same thing. I'm sorry.
Contact ATC and advise of possible debris on the runway. Contact flight dispatch to determine if flight should return. And then some landing considerations here. Avoid landing overweight. That's why you would want to either burn fuel or dump fuel to lower the weight of the aircraft. In our checklist on our airplane at Acme, it says that flybys are not recommended. Now, in this case, the American 737 did a flyby for the tower controllers to look and see and confirm that they had tire damage. Our quick response handbook, or is that the right phrase? Quick reaction, quick response, whatever. QRH
quick reference handbook.
Thank you. Quick reference. Thank you. Flybys are not recommended, and use normal approach and landing techniques. It says, caution, do not hold the nose gear off the runway. If the landing gear was retracted, consider lowering the gear early to assess the condition. Use differential braking as needed to assist directional control. If the main gear, tire, or tires have failed, do not use auto brakes, which seems obvious to me. Expect adverse yaw. Braking effectiveness may be reduced. And minimize the landing roll through application of maximum reverse thrust if able. If uncertain which tires have failed, assume the nose gear tire failure, but be ready to counter the effects of adverse yaw. After landing, taxi off the runway if possible. Notify ATC and notify flight dispatch. So that's what our Acme manual says for us to do and consider when it comes to tire failures.
So I'm assuming, Jeff, they're not recommending a fly pass because it's not something we ever practice. The only time I've ever done it is in a simulator, and you're probably more likely to mess that up than anything. I mean, not many airline pilots are used to floating past the tower at 100 feet or so.
Yeah.
Whereas, so it's completely out of the ordinary and probably not an ideal maneuver for most guys to do. Military guys probably done it a lot, and I certainly have many times.
I have, yeah.
So, but I mean, for the average bloke, I think that's probably a good recommendation.
Good advice. That and maybe their thinking is that even if they identify what you have, it's what are you going to do differently if you didn't know?
Yeah,
you're going to do the same procedure.
That's exactly right. The procedure for landing doesn't change whether you've identified a burst tire or not. I mean,
Yeah, but the only advantage to that would be is like with our aircraft, Jeff, we only have two, on each side, two main landing gear and two in the nose. So it would be nice to know if we've lost one or both. I mean, it's not going to make a whole
how is that
lot
going to change the way you do your approach and landing?
Well, I'm going to do a wheelie on the left-hand side if my right-hand side's blown and both tires are gone.
I mean,
I'm going to do a
is
nice
it gonna be
crosswind
much
land.
different?
I'm going to keep that right side or left side off
Yeah.
as long as I possibly can.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I'm only kidding. I'm
Yeah.
really only kidding.
I think, it doesn't state in our manual exactly why, what the logic or reasoning is regarding why they recommend that we don't do a fly past. But I'm sure
Because
that,
we don't want to spill anybody's coffee.
yeah, you don't want to bother those people in the tower.
No, we
it
don't
just
bother
rattles
them.
the tower.
Spill coffee, get a royal.
And by the time you're on a fly past, every single news agency in the entire country is going to be filming you. So
There you go. That's probably the real reason. Get the darn airplane on the ground as fast as you can.
Don't let anyone know what's going on. Just quick.
That really is.
Passengers terrified. Airliner plummets towards ground.
Yes. Oh, I didn't read the other note. Do not make a PA to the passengers. Let them assume everything is okay.
yes, exactly right. Love it.
Oh man. Okay. Moving on. Item 2. Dave sent us some feedback. Hey there, APG crew, newish listener here, but really getting into the show. I wanted to offer some info and experience on the topic of hypoxia training that was discussed a few episodes back and how private pilots can experience it. The FAA Wings team, Aeromedical Services, and the PALS organization recently teamed up, had a seminar at my local airport. They brought a chamber, altitude chamber, I guess, PICs attached for any pilot with at least a third class medical to try out. The experience consisted of a great briefing on what was about to happen to us, and then 5 minutes in the chamber to truly experience hypoxia. Everything is done under supervision, and your oxygen levels are watched via a pulse ox. Is that the thing, Steph, they put on your finger? Something, the oxygen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually, it's just a little sensor that goes on your finger. It has a little light in it and it measures the oxygen level.
Is that what it does? The light can tell how much oxygen you have?
How does it do it? By color?
I have no idea. I always wondered that. I think, well, you're just putting a clip on my finger.
Why don't we ask a doctor?
Yeah.
I don't know how these things work. I just know what I need to look for numbers-wise on the other end.
Let us know.
I think it has to do with how the light passes through and it measures the amount of going back to what we talked about before with hemoglobin and how it binds oxygen and
it's the fair.
I don't know. How about I look it up and I'll get back to you at the end of this.
No, don't worry about it.
That's the correct answer.
Anyway, to alert you when it's time to put the mask on. During the 5 minutes they go around. Did somebody say go around? No. And have people complete simple tasks to show how it affects your thinking and motor skills. It was a great experience, and I highly recommend it to any GA pilot out there, as the effects can occur even at low altitudes, and it's worth knowing how you will react. My personal symptoms were lightheadedness and distorted vision, but people experienced all kinds of things, as discussed in the debrief afterwards. They did mention they will have the chamber at Oshkosh for those attending, and that they do move it around sometimes, so it's worth seeing if it's coming to your local area. For those really itching to try it out, the FAA offers the training regularly at their Oklahoma City location. I think we mentioned that on a previous show, and we'll put this all information in the show notes. Yes, Steph? Yes.
So
yes.
between Micah in the chat room and myself, we were both like halfway right.
Yeah.
So the pulse oximeter works by comparing how much red light and infrared light is absorbed by the blood. So depending on the ratio of the oxygenated hemoglobin and deoxygenated hemoglobin that's present, the ratio will be different, and it compares it to tell you what your oxygen saturation.
Well, I was going to say that, but I didn't want to embarrass you. So
so it wouldn't work on a Vulcan or the royal family because they have blue blood.
Good point. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to go there.
Yeah. Okay.
Vulcans have two hearts, Steph.
Hey, you know what?
That's Star Trek.
Star Wars.
Steady.
Hey, you know what? You know what time it is?
Please say Plain Tales.
It's 1846 in Eastern Time Zone.
It is 1846.
It's also
just turned 1846.
It's also about the 2-hour mark in the show, which is the time we usually try to play the best part of the show, and you all know what that means. It's the old pilot's Plain Tales.
Thank God.
The old pilots plain tales. Dax on D-Day. The C-47 Skytrain was one of the most versatile and beloved workhorses of the Second World War. It was the militarized version of the Douglas DC-3 airliner, an aircraft that had revolutionized air transport in the 1930s and 40s. Its lasting effect on the civilian and military aviation industry made it one of the most significant transport aircraft ever produced. A twin-engine, all-metal monoplane with a tailwheel, it was developed as a larger and improved version of the earlier DC-2. It had many exceptional qualities compared to previous aircraft designs. It was fast for the time, had a good range, and could operate from short runways. It was both reliable and easy to maintain. It could carry passengers in greater comfort than ever before. Before the war, it pioneered many air travel routes, particularly across the continental United States, and it even made worldwide flights possible. It is considered the first airliner that could profitably carry just passengers. The C-47 differed from the civilian DC-3 in numerous modifications, the main being the inclusion of the cargo door and hoist attachment, a strengthened floor, and a shortened tail cone for glider towing shackles. It was also fitted with an astrodome in the roof to allow astronavigation, position fixing by taking star shots with a sextant. The C-47 had a crew of 4, 2 pilots, a radio operator, and a navigator. Only 63 feet long, it had an impressive span of over 95 feet and was powered by 2 Pratt & Whitney twin Wasp 14-cylinder radial engines with 3-bladed constant-speed props. Although it was unpressurized, it could reach 26,000 feet and carry 28 troops for nearly 1,400 nautical miles. The Royal Air Force version was named the Dakota. Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Commander, said of it, 4 pieces of equipment that most senior officers came to regard as amongst the most vital to our success in Africa and Europe were the bulldozer, the Jeep, the 2-ton truck, and the C-47 airplane. Curiously, none of these is designed for combat. The famous aviation author Len Morgan said of it, the C-47 groaned, it protested, it rattled, it leaked oil, it ran hot, it ran cold, it ran rough. It staggered along on hot days and scared you half to death. Its wings flexed and twisted in a horrifying manner, and it sank back to earth with a great sigh of relief. But it flew, and it flew, and it flew. The lead 47 pilot on D-Day was Lieutenant Colonel Joel Crouch, whose job it was to drop Pathfinder paratroops at Saint-Germain-de-Vaville in France. Cloud cover made life hard for the navigators, and some jumpers ended up far from their targets, whilst others came under withering anti-aircraft fire. But the first 4 drop zone teams arrived about 15 minutes after midnight, and although scattered, the paratroopers were soon able to set up their lights. D-Day had started. 832 C-47s flew on the night of June the 5th, and by the end, 23,400 British and American paratroops had been dropped. 75 years later, on the anniversary of D-Day, and some of those C-47s are back. One is Betsy's Biscuit bomber, and I was lucky enough to get to talk to some of the crew who manned this venerable aircraft. Nick Camacho is a friend of the Airline Pilot Guy show, and I asked him what he thought it would have been like for a C-47 pilot on a D-Day mission.
Yeah, so the C-47, obviously its main mission, or the most well-known mission that it had was dropping the paratroopers. There were Pathfinder airplanes that went out earlier than the main wave, and then there was a great number of airplanes that went over full of paratroopers, 28 26 or 28 paratroopers in the airplanes. But the airplanes also did quite a lot of glider towing. And not only were they towing gliders, Horsas and Wacos, but they would do double glider tows. And so if you look at, some of those combat gliders that they use, they don't exactly look like efficient, mean machines to begin with. And then they'd put two of those behind a C-47. And one of the guys that actually taught my dad to fly, and was a very good friend of my dad's, he flew EC-47s in Vietnam, which is the kind of the spooky version of the airplane. And his dad flew C-47s in World War II on D-Day and flew 2 missions. And I don't remember what I believe his first mission was a paratrooper job mission, but right now I'm just not sure. But his second mission was a double glider tow over the beaches. So that's a pretty neat thing that they did. And then also the airplanes, in the later days were also big logistical staples. They were able to move not only food and munitions, but they were able to move big guns, howitzers. Our airplane with the big double folding cargo door, you could actually drive a Jeep up into it, so they could move Jeeps. So they did pretty much everything except deliver the munitions to the enemies. It's hard for me to imagine what it would have been like at their age and their experience level in life and in the airplane to have to, go up and do what they were doing. It's kind of funny. Just today we were taking off and I mentioned that, the winds were out of limits, and I was looking at the windsock and it was a direct crosswind of about 14 knots, and I was flying in the right seat. I was performing the pilot non-flying function, so I didn't have to worry about it. But I remember looking at that windsock thinking, yeah, that probably about the edge of my personal limits there. So I don't know, even if I was supposed to make this takeoff, I may hand it off, and then to think back to those guys being 10 or 12 years younger than me, having, a quarter of the amount of flying time that I had, and then having to go launch up into all sorts of weather conditions, and then to get there and have the type of defense that they had to fly through and fly around and everything. It's really kind of unfathomable for me to even imagine that. As I sit here looking at the wind thinking, I don't know if I want to go flying today with the wind. As the past decade or so, I think that the movies and the documentaries and everything have gotten much better at providing kind of a more realistic look at what actually happened and everything. And probably my single favorite sequence in any sort of movie or film or TV show or anything is the last 2 minutes of the first episode of Band of Brothers, which is when they line up all those DC-3s. And it's just a minute and a half of those DC-3s taking off and going by the camera and putting the gear up. And I love that. But another thing about that series that just gets me is, it's, any amount of loss of life is tragic and that sort of in any event. And in war, it's horrible. And, I've growing up, I was not quite of age to understand anything in the Gulf War. So really 9/11 and then the events since 9/11 have been my only life experience with that. And so the numbers that I associate with loss regarding war and the numbers that seem big to me, you look back at any one day, how many troops we've lost in the last 15 or 20 years, and it just pales in comparison to the numbers you read about in the war. Or even if you watch something like Band of Brothers, when they have the scene where those guys are flying in over the beaches early in the morning, and just the level of loss of life every time an airplane goes down, whether it's in the D-Day invasion, you're losing a crew of 3 or 4 guys plus 20 or 30 jumpers, or even when you look at the B-17 raids we had where they were losing dozens of airplanes, and each airplane that went down, we're losing 10 crew members. It's just, for me, it's hard to fathom the day-to-day level of loss of life that they had in those events through 1944 and 1945.
My father had once flown the DC-3, and I asked Nick just what it was like to fly the aircraft.
It's an incredibly fun airplane to fly. It's a little challenging. My background is in, it varies for people based on their background. We have guys come in who have lots of big airplane experience, airline captains who have the idea of a checklist flow and a 2-man crew and all that down fine, and have no problem with the wingtip clearance on a 100-foot wingspan airplane, and have no problem sitting 15 feet off the ground in the cockpit. But then you stick them in a conventional gear airplane with a free castering tailwheel with a lock, and just watching them taxi to the end of the runway can be a little interesting sometimes. And for me, it's kind of the opposite. My background's small airplanes. I fly Luscombs and Bonanzas mainly. And so for me, I'm pretty comfortable in tailwheel airplanes, but sometimes I struggle. If I'm out of the seat for a while, I struggle to have a good flare because of the sight. The sight picture is a little different because I'm sitting so high. And then one thing that I really struggle with is the airplane is very sluggish. It's got a lot of inertia, and it's not common you can go through a burble and you could swing the yoke all the way over to the stops, and it'll sit at the stops for a second or a second and a half, and the airplane will start to react, and then you'll get to about halfway back to where you want to be, and then you come back to neutral, and then the airplane will kind of slow into the neutral point where you want it to be. So it's slightly different just in the control throws you have to put in and the amount of thinking ahead you have to do because it's so slow to react. But as far as sitting on the ground at the end of the runway and spooling up those big radial engines and running them up to 2,400 horsepower and smoking down the runway, it's a pretty unique and awesome experience.
Now, I knew Nick would be doing a lot of formation flying during the DAX over Normandy mission, and I was curious to know how they managed when they were on the left-hand side of a formation, since the captain normally sits on the left.
So that's an interesting question. The way that we've been operating the last 2 weeks, we've actually, since we brief beforehand and we basically know everything we're doing for the whole flight, if we're going to be flying on the left side, we actually put the pilot flying in the right seat. And so on this trip, we have 5 pilots. My dad, Ben, Sherman, and Shane are all PIC rated. My dad doesn't do much of the flying these days. He likes to just kind of hang out and wrench on the airplane and wipe the airplane down. But Ben, Sherman, and Shane are all real active pilots. And Sherman's actually our fast qualified guy, and he's by far our most current and proficient formation guy. And so Shane's been doing a lot of work with him, especially back in the States before he came over here. Shane did a lot of formation work with him. But for all the big functions where we're flying in formation, it'll be Sherman, and he will sit on the side of the airplane that is appropriate to where we'll be. And the airplane is a 2-crew airplane. And the only difference between, obviously, there's differences, like if you're sitting on the left side, you're going to be holding the yoke with your left hand and the throttles with your right hand. But as far as actual functionality, the only difference between the seats is that the cowl flap controls are on the far right wall. So if you had to fly that airplane single seat, it would actually make more sense to sit on the right side because you can reach everything from the right side easily. If you're sitting on the left side and you're by yourself, you have to reach all the way across and run the cowl flaps from the other side. So that's kind of the only major difference between the seats.
Now, having sat inside Betsy's Biscuit bomber and looked at the cockpit, I was curious to ask Nick how they got the gear up and down.
So the gear is kind of an interesting situation. It's a hydraulically actuated gear, and then it's got a mechanical latch. So we actually have 2 levers in the airplane. So when we take off and rotate, the pilot in command, or the pilot flying, I should say, calls for the gear up. And the first thing that the pilot not flying will do is he'll reach down, and we have the mechanical latch, which is a handle directly to the right of the pilot's seat. And it's got a little loop latch over it. So when I say it's the mechanical latch, it actually has there's a mechanical latch in the landing gear that is actuated by a cable by this handle. And then this handle itself has a little loop latch that goes over it. So you reach down, you flick the loop latch down so that this handle is free to come up, and you pull this handle all the way up. And at that point, the gear is no longer mechanically locked down, but it's still kind of down by gravity. And at that point, you reach back, and there's a second landing gear handle on the hydraulic panel behind the right seat, and you bring that handle into the up position, and that pressurizes the hydraulic system on the up side of the landing gear, and that brings the landing gear up, and the landing gear comes all the way up and builds pressure until the landing gear is in the up position, and then the pressure falls off, and then you put the handle back to neutral. So when we're actually flying around, the gear is only held up by hydraulic pressure. And every once in a while, we'll get the gear start to sag a little bit, and you actually have to reach down and bob the handle up for 5 seconds or so, and you suck the gear back up. And then putting it down is basically just the opposite scenario. So you put the hydraulic handle down, and it pressurizes the downside of the gear. The gear goes all the way down. And then while the landing gear hydraulic handle is down. Then you reach down and you put the mechanical latch handle down, put the loop up, and then you reach back and put the hydraulic handle into neutral. And only when the hydraulic handle is in neutral and the mechanical latch handle is down and latched, will you get 2 green lights. So, most airplanes, you flip the switch. I have a debonair, which has electric gear, and my gear is merely, I put the switch up, the gear does its thing, and after a couple seconds, I get a couple of green lights. So I flip the switch, I see the lights, and I'm good to go. In this airplane, you actually, the check for the gear is you run everything, and then you look at the hydraulic handle, and you say the hydraulic handle is neutral, the latch handle is down and latched, we have hydraulic pressure in the gear, and we have 2 green lights. And all those 4 steps are done to complete the landing gear down checklist item.
So that was a fairly strange procedure. I wondered if the C-47 had any other weird foibles.
A couple of the interesting things for me are that, from my vantage point as a little GA guy, is we have pressure carburetors. So our mixture controls only consist of auto rich and auto lean. So we don't have to fiddle with mixtures or anything. We just take off an auto rich and we move it back to auto lean. And it's incredibly simple compared to a little GA airplane where you're always dialing in the mixture. And then the other thing that I find kind of funny is that we have 5 systems on the airplane basically that are hydraulically actuated. And that's the obvious ones, which are the landing gear and the brakes, the cowl flaps and the wing flaps. And then the 5th system on our airplane that is actually hydraulically operated is our windshield wipers. We have a little hydraulic valve, and that runs our windshield wipers.
Really? I asked Nick. Hydraulic windshield wipers? Why not electric ones?
Man, we wonder that every day because our little windshield wiper valves leak all the time, and they're in the worst possible place because they're above the yokes and they're always dripping on your knee. And so electric motors would have been a lot more convenient, I think.
Yeah, I have to agree. Now, I wanted to finish up by asking Nick what his very favorite flight in Betsy had been.
I would have to say up until now, we did about 2 years ago, we did a show in Michigan where they tried to do a bunch of things with the reenactment jumpers, like similar to what we're dropping. Well, actually, some of the guys here are guys that we dropped in Michigan, and they actually spent a ton of effort and resources into getting as many D-Day invasion airplanes to their air show so they could do a reenactment jump out of invasion scheme only airplanes. And I think we ended up with 5 C-47s and a C-46 all in D-Day invasion markings. So that was pretty cool sitting on, and it was just Shane and I. Shane's another one of our captains. He's the guy who I flew with today, and he's a college roommate of mine. So it's actually a lot of fun spending time with him. And then we were the only 2 pilots on that trip. So we flew the airplane all the way across the country. And then I don't know if I could pick out one flight, but the 2 or 3 show flights we did there were, we all lined up on the runway, and we were number 3 in a flight of 5. And I could just stick my head out the window and look forward. And there were 2 airplanes in front of me, and then there were 2 airplanes behind me. There was a C-46 sitting on the taxiway ready to roll on. And then we all got up in formation or in a kind of a trail setup and dropped our jumpers. And that was pretty impressive. Obviously, the stuff that we're doing here definitely rivals that, if not exceeds it. So,
well, that's it for this plain tale, but there's more audio to come from both Nick and from the chief pilot of Betsy's Biscuit bomber, and that'll be coming out very shortly. So my great thanks to Nick and the members of Betsy's team for allowing me to meet them and to marvel at their wonderful aircraft.
Wow, that's exciting. I felt like we were there with you and Nick at Duxford.
It was marvelous. Nick was such a knowledgeable chap to talk about, and he's obviously got such a fantastic passion for the aircraft and the work he does with it, and he was incredibly enthusiastic. So it was, for me, it was brilliant. I could have talked to him and the rest of the crew for hours, but sadly it was just limited a little bit by our time. But I had a lovely time looking around the aircraft, watching Nick and Shane fly it around the local area, around the circuit. It was absolutely brilliant. And everyone was very kind, so I had a thoroughly nice time.
And the pictures you've shared are fantastic.
I was lucky
love
because
all of
I could get a little bit of access that perhaps the rest of the crowd behind the barriers couldn't. I was able to get some angles that more represented what it might have looked like on the day. So I was very pleased, and thanks again to Nick for taking me under his arm and letting me get nice and close, and also to even climb up into the flight deck. And I tell you what, I was all on my own. There was no one else around. I was sitting in the seat of this flight deck, and I was just, it was very emotional because the old man, he flew his first operational aircraft in the airline industry was a DC-3, very, very similar. And there I was sitting in what was effectively the same airplane, thinking, I wonder what this would have been like for a young man out of the war and flying around the dusty airfields of Australia in the 1940s. It must have been amazing.
On the screen behind me, I have one of the fantastic photos. It doesn't do it justice because the colors are a little off, but that Nick took of the reenactors and the Betty's Biscuit bomber behind me. We're going to put all of the amazing photos that Nick took when he made his visit. We'll put those in the show notes so you can all see just the amazing sights there.
Nick,
thanks very much.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Another one of the aircraft that made the journey from the United States over for the Normandy anniversary was an aircraft that is called That's All Brother. And that aircraft was the lead aircraft in the Normandy invasion. And that airplane was weeks away from being scrapped, and an organization here in the States called the Commemorative Air Force realized the historic value of that airplane, and they restored it back to its D-Day condition. So that was probably one of the airplanes you saw sitting on the ramp, but that one is an extremely historic airplane from here in the States.
Isn't it amazing? I just take my hat off to the enthusiasts, the guys who have the money to be able to, and because all these are privately looked after, owned, but it is, it's such a charitable thing to do to keep these aircraft alive for us all to see, particularly the ones with such enormous historical interest. I'm just in awe, all the guys that do this kind of thing. It's brilliant.
I was waking up very early. It was either yesterday or the day before, and I had Fox News Channel on in the room, and they started showing a report from Normandy and or I think that's where they were. But anyway, they were showing some of the DC-3s involved in this reenactment. And guess which one they chose? Betty's Biscuit bomber. Interviewing the skipper, the head guy. Does he have like gray hair and a gray mustache?
They all do, Jeff.
Yeah. Well,
except Nick Kamechko, he's quite a youngster.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's too young. But anyway, I thought, I know these people. Yeah, I didn't see Nick, but or his dad, but I did see the airplane, and I thought that is so cool.
Sherman Smoot, who does the first half of the next plane tale. Then we finish off with Nick, and that's kind of more of the nuts and bolts of the flight out. And that kind of stuff. So that I found the description of how Sherman flew the aircraft out. It was great, and of course we had to do a little bit of phantom talk because he's an F4.
Yes. Well, I mean, he can't be. He's a nice guy, but he can't be perfect.
Can't be perfect. And what's more, he likes the DC-10. Ha!
Really? Wow,
yeah,
not a lot do. But I was going to say, when he was describing the control responsiveness, I'm thinking, Dana, that sounds a lot like the airplane we fly. Maybe not to the same level, but there's some.
Do you have hydraulic windshield wipers too?
No, we don't have hydraulic windshield.
Yeah, but that caught my interest too when Nick mentioned that. I went, he said there are 5 things that, and I went, wipers? You're kidding me?
That's crazy.
It remotely looks like our bird.
Well, hey, it's a Douglas.
Yes,
it is. The same kind of, and the control system is pretty much the same as the control system in the Mad Dog.
And it's a Douglas nose, the windshield layout, that kind of sharp windshield cut that they have. It's classically Douglas, I think, because they all look the same.
Definitely see the DNA in the
Yep.
airplane that we fly. All right. Well, that's awesome. I can't wait to hear part 2. And again, a reminder that you need to check out our show notes because that's where we're going to see those fantastic photos that Nick took. Okay. Let's continue on. This is from Tim, and he sent us some audio feedback.
Hi, Captain Jeff. This is Tim from Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm a private pilot. I guess you could call me the private pilot guy. In any event, I've really enjoyed listening to your Airline Pilot Guy podcast over the past 5 or 6 years. In the shameless plug category, I'm going to say that I fly with an awesome flying club, the Wings of Carolina, based at the Raleigh Executive Jetport, Tango Tango Alpha in Sanford, North Carolina. I started listening to your podcast back when you were a solo act. You had a great show and did an awesome job. Once you started adding co-host, the quality of the show
went way, way down.
Increased, and it was even better than it was before, as I'm sure you will agree. I enjoyed listening to Miami Rick back then. I always thought of him as the Cliff Clavin of the airlines. Now you have Captain Nick and Captain Dana, and they are both awesome and bring great things to the podcast. One of my favorite parts of the podcast is Captain Nick's Plane Tales. He does an awesome job bringing his stories to life. Dr. Steph, the lovely Dr. Steph, increased the classiness of your show several-fold, and I really enjoy her contributions as well.
Classy lady.
You're welcome.
So here's my question that I'd like to pose to your crew, and maybe even the entire APG community. It has to do with the way airlines board their planes. Now, I understand that they want to get their first-class passengers, the very important people, on first, so that they can start pampering them in the way to which they've become accustomed. My concern is the way the rest of us steerage passengers are loaded. The airlines seem to load the passengers such that the first seats in the front of the plane are taken up initially. What happens is the passengers are trying to stuff their overloaded baggage into the overhead compartments.
Because they charge
And
for
while
it.
they're doing that, the rest of us are standing in line behind them waiting to get on. This really slows things down. Next, they have to squeeze their way past the overweight guy on the aisle seat, get themselves in and all situated. Once that's done, then the next few seats can go through the same song and dance. My question is, why not have the passengers load such that the first people that get on the plane walk all the way to the rear of the plane and start doing their readiness at the aft of the plane. While they're doing that, the next few passengers can get on a few seats ahead of them and do the same thing. Meanwhile, this is not holding up the boarding process very much at all. It seems to me that this would greatly speed up the process, probably cut the time in half and be much, much more efficient. Now, there's probably a good reason why they don't do this, but for the life of me, I can't think of what it might be. I would love to hear your take on this. And also, the next time you're in Raleigh, I'd love to get together and buy you a couple of IPAs. Also in the shameless plug category,
bourbon?
We could perhaps go to the Aviator Brewing Company in Fuquay Arena, which is one of my favorites. Thanks again for your podcast, and I look forward to hearing your answers about this burning question.
Inquiring minds want to know. Yeah, we've talked about this several times in the almost 10 years of the Airline Pilot Guy show, and we have no idea, basically, is the answer.
Actually, I can answer this a little bit.
Oh, okay, Steph.
It is something that is actually
the one that brings
studied
class
by
to the podcast. Go ahead.
and sometimes some knowledge occasionally.
Sometimes.
Not always. Sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about. Here I might not know what I'm talking about, but I am fairly certain, fairly confident of what I'm about to say. Haven't looked at it in a long time to verify and had not listened to your feedback before this moment. So clearly I've prepared well. However,
normal preparation.
Yes, standard. This is actually studied by the airlines, or at least by folks who are trying to make airlines operate more efficiently. They would certainly like to get the passengers on board as efficiently and quickly as possible, because that brings down their turnaround time. And as far as I know, from what they've looked at, that makes good sense. Put the people who on the plane who are seated at the back on first, because then they can walk all the way down the aisle to the end, put their bags up, get situated in their seats, and then people can continue filling in from the back forward. You think that would work? In reality, for whatever reason, it's not any faster. So and airlines have also tried other things like seat all of the customers in the window seats first, and then work their way to the middle to see if that makes a difference, thinking people will get out of the aisles as they move into their seats. That doesn't work. Or at least it's not, sufficiently faster. So Glenn actually in the chat room brings up a good point that people pay good money to get on the airplane first, and that's something that is beneficial to the airlines. They can charge more for people who want to pay more to be the first on the aircraft to put their bags overhead, regardless of where they're sitting. Famously Southwest Airlines, and I think is there a carrier like that in Europe too? I don't know if Ryanair assigns seats or not. I think they do.
I think
I think they do now.
They do now, but they were like Southwest before.
Yeah. So picking your own seat is actually fairly efficient, because people aren't going to stand around and all try to crowd into the same row at the same time. There's a lot of different ways to do it, and I don't know that anyone is any faster than the other.
Unless you're boarding a 737-900, which has a pole on its butt, you don't want everybody on the back side of the airplane at once, because then it would fall on its butt.
That
would be bad.
Be an issue.
I'm just saying what David said. I'm just repeating what he said.
Oh, David, come on, David. Don't let him talk anymore.
Sorry about that, guys. Truth hurts.
There is actually a fantastic video I watched about. It showed the actual efforts made and the different types of boarding and how they varied, and definitely going to the back first is not the quickest. And Steph hit the nail on the head when she said it's actually which seat, whether you're in the window, the middle, or the aisle seat, that makes a significant difference, as opposed to which row you're going into. And there is a complicated combination.
It's like an algorithm,
which would be perfect, but nobody would ever stick to it. Passengers push in, passengers don't do the right thing, they get in the wrong seat, blah blah blah, and random, just letting the whole airplane board at the same time randomly is actually quicker than trying to make people go to the correct areas at the right time. It's really weird.
And did the Mythbusters do a thing on?
They may have.
It sounds familiar, and they didn't really even come to a conclusion from.
No,
there is no conclusion to it. Yeah. But what would actually help it out and help boarding faster is, instead of charging for check bags, let those go free and charge for carry-on bags.
Yeah,
i.e. rollerboard bags, because actually that is, I think, the biggest hindrance to boarding. And of course, get towards the end and people still bringing on the rollerboard bags, and there's no space. And now all of a sudden you have, everybody bringing the bags towards the front of the airplane so they can be checked. I mean, that truly is the biggest hindrance. So if the airlines are smart, they would go ahead and start charging, of course, if you have status with the airline, you don't charge for the rollerboards. And that's what they kind of do with the boarding process now, is that they try to board their higher priority, higher value customers up front, and start boarding them earlier. So
although
I
might argue that those folks are the ones who travel a whole lot more, and they're perhaps a little bit more efficient at the process.
They're very efficient. Yeah. They're very efficient. So that's why I'm saying, don't charge them. But the everyday customer that comes along and flies once a year, or a couple times a year maybe, don't charge to check a bag. Let them check the bags, and then the carry-ons, okay, you one personal carry-on, no rollerboards. If you bring a rollerboard on, we charge you for it. It would make the boarding process so much more efficient.
Let's just face it. The problem in all of
people.
This, people. Yep, you got it.
Well,
welcome to my Friday, Jeff.
FedEx or UPS. Let's go.
If we just eliminate the people, we wouldn't have this problem.
I've been saying that all day. Anyway, actually, Mark Roboff in the chat room brings up another interesting point of if you can board the front door and the back door at the rear door at the same time. I've done that at small airports, and it does seem to go quite a bit faster because if you've doubled the amount
Makes
of entry
sense.
points,
Yeah.
and that does help. Not you can't do that everywhere, but
You know,
have the
Southwest
opportunity.
has, I don't know, Steph, if I know
What
you
about
fly
chocolate?
Southwest a lot,
Uh-huh.
but I've seen some places where they have like a jetway that goes to the one left door, and then they have a jetway that actually extends up and over the wing, the left
What?
wing, and then into
Where have you seen this?
I've seen it at Bradley and a couple of other places. Which just every time I see it, I go, "Ooh, that does not look like it's a safe thing to do," because it actually is going over part of the airplane to
I have
get to
never
the.
seen that.
Oh, okay. Well, I was hoping that you had, but anyway,
To be fair, I don't think I've ever flown in or out of Bradley.
we used to do
Have
the.
you been taking more of that Ambien again, Jeff?
Yeah, might be, or maybe just drinking too much.
Have a lot of wine in that glass.
But really, what is too much? What's the definition?
There's no such thing. But
Yeah.
on a more serious note, also accountability for weight. That would be a safer bet as well, because people carry so much on the airplane that truthfully is not accounted for weight.
Is that really going to speed up the process, though?
It would speed up the process. Absolutely would speed up the process. Plus, we'd have better accountability how much weight's on the actual airplane.
Who cares about that?
Oh, who cares? Yeah, who cares?
It's always way more than what.
Well,
they say
then
it
you'll
is.
start weighing the passengers and charging them for their weight. Then,
Well,
Yeah.
I'm
And there's some
definitely not
airlines that
gonna
do that.
fail because then all of a sudden the trim's going to change.
You're on a
Yeah.
you're on a little
I don't think I fit the typical crew profile weight.
I've been weighed for island hopping flights.
Yeah.
well,
there's some
Steph
airlines we
should
talk
go at
about.
half price.
I should go at half price, and I never have
Yeah.
any luggage either.
Free.
No, I know.
Should go free.
I want a discount,
You
Yeah.
do.
A
You
peanut
deserve
shell and
one.
some dental floss. That's all Steph needs.
but they usually let me sit up front too, so I'll take it. I'll continue to pay. What did you say?
I don't know. Dana's had a lot of bourbon. That's all I can tell you.
Actually, I haven't.
You could
I
have
really
fooled
haven't.
me.
Hey,
And he's getting argumentative as well.
private
I'm not.
pilot guy Tim from Raleigh.
Yes, you are.
Perhaps sometimes we will have to get together and have some hog wild IPA and debate the merits of how to best board an aircraft somewhere.
I want to be there too.
Okay, fine.
Me too.
It
Oh,
might be boring.
Huh?
Yeah, you haven't had too much. So since somebody mentioned Mark Roboff in the chat room, I believe it was Steph. You
I
said
did,
something. We have some audio feedback. If you're wondering what Mark's voice sounds like, and Micah, we all know what Micah's great voice sounds like. Micah and Mark got together and recorded some audio for us. So let's take a listen.
Hey, it's your main man, Micah here, and I'm at the Maine Diner. And yes, that is Maine with an E, and it's in Wells, Maine, about, 30 or 40 miles south of me in Portland. But I came down here for a very special reason. I came down here to meet up with a great guy, and we've only just met, and it's like we're old pals, who flew in from California to do some things in the area. I'll let him tell you about it, but it's a good friend now. Mark Roboff. Mark, welcome to Maine.
Oh, thank you. It's good to be back. I spent a lot of time in Maine and spent summers growing up in Gunkwit. I knew I wasn't going to have too much time to spend up here this year. So I turned Thursday night on a work trip in Boston, the opportunity to come up and meet you, Micah, here at the Maine Diner. It's a lovely place. I haven't been here in a couple of years. Food is as good as it always has been.
It's been a long time for me since I've been here too. And yeah, the food was great. But you work in the aviation industry. Can you tell us a little bit about what brought you here and the kind of aviation work that you do?
Sure. So I do work in information technology. I've been supporting the aviation industry for about 5-6 years. Fully dedicated, about 8-9 years on and off beyond that. And I do a lot of work with the defense side of the business, with the aircraft manufacturing side of the business. I've done a lot of work building systems that will predict maintenance needs for airplanes, which is a very interesting technical side of the business. But essentially, if you can predict when you're going to have a maintenance problem on an airplane, and you avoid that delay or that cancellation, which we've all, as frequent flyers, been party to now and then. You can save airlines hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
So, you said predictive maintenance, and that's something that just fascinates me, because when I think about predictive maintenance, well, I think about my car, and I get an oil change every 6 months or 6,000 miles. But predictive maintenance, how can you predict maintenance and what's going to fail?
It's a great question. So airplanes are complex beasts, right? And they have millions of parts. And what's interesting about your car is, beyond an oil change, if you have a problem, if you have that check engine light, you go to the dealer, or if it's under warranty, you go to your garage of choice, and they'll take the car for a day. They'll open up the hood, they'll diagnose it, they'll see what's going on, they'll order the part, and they'll replace it. And essentially, that's what life is like typically with an airplane. Right? There's a problem. Someone's going to walk up to the gate. They're going to go understand, okay, well, what's going on here? They might open up the airplane equivalent of a hood, right? It's usually a panel or a pat somewhere on the engine or in the cockpit, and they'll diagnose it, and then they'll fix it. Airplanes, though, because they are so complex, they record a lot of information, right? And you can take that information about how the airplane is running, about how the engines are running. You can take vibration data, temperature data, failure data, and you can run it through lots of computer algorithms that look at essentially, right, what the airplane was doing when you last had a problem, right? Taking that pattern, right? If you find out, okay, well, what was going on with the engine temperature or the vibration of certain components when you had maybe an engine out issue, right? You can start monitoring those things and try to predict in the future, right, when an engine issue is going to happen again. So you look at a modern airliner like a 737 or an A320, one of the wide body jets. They're typically 6 or 7 components that, because of what they do, right, are big maintenance ticket issues. Right, engines, the flight controls, the bleed systems, right, the landing gear systems, and actually seats and cabins. And
seats in cabins, you can predict the maintenance of a seat, of a passenger seat.
You can, and may not be all that useful. If the tray table breaks in seat 35E, right? Because the coach seat is pretty simple. But then you have those lie flat seats, like for instance on JetBlue Mint or the international products for American or Delta or United. And those seats have typically 1,000 parts to them, many of which are moving, and many of which are electric, right? Those seats also cost between $50,000 and $80,000 a pop. And they break often because people like you and I sit in them, right? And maybe you have your phone in your pocket and you recline into bed mode, and then the phone slips from your pocket and then gets stuck in the middle of an actuator. And then when you try to bring your seat back up, right, which is an electronic action, right, the mechanisms in the seat pulverize your phone. Right, breaks your phone, also breaks your seat. This is my replacement iPhone because that happened to me 3 months ago. Right, that happens every day. So what happens is when you have those issues with seats, right, they're written up. And if you take the whole history of those write-ups, essentially the maintenance logs, and you understand where and when and why and how those things are happening over time, you can build models that predict where they're going to happen again and when they're going to fail. With that information, you could take corrective actions to make sure that they don't fail.
When we were talking earlier, you mentioned bleed systems, and I'm not an expert on what a bleed system is, but from what I understand, it's how you are bleeding off air to power other things from the engine, like the air conditioning, et cetera, and so on. Now, that sounds like a very complex thing. You can predict what's happening with bleed systems as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a bleed system, not every airplane has them, right? So the 787 famously is called a bleedless aircraft, right? But on any other jetliner flying in the world today, engine air, air that gets compressed through the engine, a piece of that, stream of that air, right, gets diverted from the engine flow and is then sent almost as the artery system through the plane to power all sorts of different function. Most critical of which is the environmental controls. So the cabin pressurization, also the cabin heat and cooling. That air gets cooled by something called an AC pack because when it leaves the engine, it's very, very hot, and then it's sent through again like a ventricular system or like your artery, predicting what goes on those bleed systems. Bleed systems are controlled by valves, right? How quickly those valves are opening and closing, and you can monitor the temperature of the air that goes through those valves, and you can monitor when those valves aren't opening and closing as quickly as they should be, or if they get stuck. Right? On a modern aircraft, when that happens, an alert will be sent to the cockpit, right, and be read by the crew. And then what you do is to build these predictive models. You take all that information that the airplane is generating, and then you apply artificial intelligence algorithms, machine learning algorithms, lots of high-end statistical models to say, okay, if I understand the patterns in which these things fail in the past, I can extrapolate when they're going to fail in the future.
So you mentioned artificial intelligence, which is just another thing that fascinates me just in general. And Robert Heinlein said, actually, never underestimate the power of human stupidity. Now, if you're doing that, in terms of the amount of intelligence that's there, and sometimes I wonder how much intelligence we have left in the human race, how do you create artificial intelligence?
It's a great question. So artificial intelligence is a means to build computer programs, right? And it's separate from the other means to build computer programs, which is to program a computer program. When you think about programming a computer program, you're putting together a recipe of instructions out of control statements and if then else statements and loops and higher order functions and execution. An artificial intelligence system leverages data and methods to detect patterns from that data to learn, execute an outcome, right? So instead of saying do this, then this, then this, and if you see X, do Y, but if you see Y, do Z, right? An artificial intelligence system will basically take raw data, you'll tell it predict for X, and then assuming you've given it enough data and enough time, and again, I'm being very general here, it will try and predict X.
So it's more like giving it data, giving it a means to solve a problem, and running it through a self-test?
You can think of it absolutely like that. The reason it's called artificial intelligence is because it essentially building computer programs that mimic in certain limited ways the way humans think and learn, right? So a very big field in artificial intelligence, one that's used in doing predictive maintenance, is building these computer models that mimic the neurons that fire in the human brain. Right? It's called an artificial neural network. And what's really interesting about artificial neural networks is that they're very good, right, at solving problems through pattern detection given enough data. You don't need to necessarily tell it how to solve the problem, right? So if I was going to take an artificial neural network and I was going to feed it with years and years and years of temperature data through air temperature in the bleed system, if I was going to feed it with vibration data and valve open time data and valve close time data, and if I asked it to predict when a trim valve was going to fail, right, or pressure regulator valve was going to fail, right, and I gave it enough data where those failures were prevalent in the data set, it would figure out what information is causal to those failures.
It's just amazing, and it's mind-boggling, really mind-boggling.
But just as we don't necessarily know right, down to the blueprints and the architecture, how the human mind works, right? We don't always know how the neural networks, the artificial.
What a tease. If you want to listen to the rest of this, since we're getting close to the end of the show here, we're going to try to fit in some more feedback. I'm going to have this in the show notes, and you can listen to the rest of this awesome interview that Micah had with Mark Roboff in that place they were in. I forgot what the name of it is. In Maine.
Maine Diner or something like that?
Maine Diner, and I just don't remember the town. I think I would butcher the name of it.
I think they'll tell us here in a moment. It'll just be up to us to pronounce it correctly.
It's south of Portland.
Okay. Waiting for Micah to say something in the chat room. And I hope you guys don't mind, but Maine Diner, yeah, and Wells.
Wells.
Oh, yeah, that's
Is that how it's pronounced? Wells.
Wells.
Well, there seems to be some disagreement. Well or Wells?
Yeah,
Your choice.
well,
Wells. Okay.
Wells. Okay. Anyway, Micah, you're such a great interviewer, and Mark, wow, just like so much good information regarding AI and stuff, and it was a awesome interview, and we got through about 2/3, 3/4 of it, and I think that it's definitely well worth listening to the rest of it. And again, it'll be in the show notes, and you can listen to the whole darn thing. So thanks again for sending that in. It was awesome. Micah says, you missed the best part where Mark says how pilots will become redundant. Oh, that's a good tease.
Probably a good job.
That is a
Start
good
over
tease.
again. Let's start
So
over.
now you got to.
That would have lit Jeff's blue touch paper.
It's a good thing I didn't hear that part, because I probably would have, there would have been profanity probably. So
I would have repeated it myself.
Okay. So we're looking at the Liz. Liz is such an optimist.
What do you think, Liz? 17?
She has like so many things in this feedback folder. I'm thinking, what?
We're on number. We got through like 4.
6.
Well, we got to.
We skipped around a little bit.
Yeah. 3.
3.
And then you didn't even get to 4.
No, we skipped 4 and 5, and we just played 6. And she has what, 19 in here?
17.
17.
I think we should end with 17 if Liz agrees, unless she wants to point us somewhere else. What do you think, Liz?
I think we have to learn not to talk so much.
Yes, 17 for sure. Okay.
Well, yeah, we could just play the feedback and just not talk.
Exactly.
Just let it run continuously, and then at the end be like,
yeah, I think it'd be kind of a boring show.
Yeah, we wouldn't answer any questions, really.
What's the point? Okay, Liz says yes, 17 for sure. Okay, this is from Rick. Rick who? If it's from the Rick that I know, I think we're going to skip this one.
No, it's Rick Bell.
No, it's not Rick Bell, is it?
I don't think it is. It is not.
New to
I don't know what it
ABV.
is. Last.
Yeah. Okay.
This, but...
Just kidding, Rick Bell. I love you, man. Hello, all. Long-term listener, 3 to 4 years. First-time caller. Writer? Here. This morning, I was listening to the latest episode whilst on my way. Oh, he's got to be from the UK.
He's not. Keep reading.
He's not American. Oh, he's not?
No, he's not from. He is.
Okay. Whilst on my way to work, and I just wanted to say hats off to Nick. Even if he is not technically retired at the time of this letter, it's close enough for government work. It was a touching send-off for someone about to embark on a new chapter in life. May it be filled with brews, balls, and billiards. If Nick goes in for that sort of thing, that is. Also, now he will have time to work on compiling all those old Pilot Plane Tales episodes into an anthology.
Geez, that would be a very long recording.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what he means, though.
Oh, well, that's the only way it's going to happen.
But it sounds like a lot of work to me.
Yeah.
You should make a book.
No, I'm not going to make a book.
Oh.
This part is for Steph.
Oh.
I was intending on making it to your meetup that you had in Salt Lake City approximately March through April, but as life would have it, I ended up coming down with a pretty terrific bug and was down for a 10 count. That said, if any of you are ever in the area again, I will do my bestest to make it out. Okay, so he's not from.
Well, maybe he is from the UK, but
Okay.
lives in.
Well,
Salt Lake
whilst
City area.
Americans don't say whilst.
Yeah, but he didn't spell it correctly. I'm not calling you
That's
out there on your
true.
spelling, Rick, but
Yeah. Oh, Rick.
typo.
Really?
We'll chalk that up to typo.
Yeah,
Definitely.
that E made it in. That wasn't supposed to be there. Anyway, I will do my bestest to make it out. P.S. Steph, from one Jeeper to another, and if the flying community indulges me, have you ever made it to any of the Jeep safaris out here? I have yet as not, but Utah has some amazing, that's all caps, Jeep and off-road trails. And it's definitely amazing seeing some of the great backcountry out here. Keep up the great work. And as Nick would say, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. So
No, I
Steph,
have not made it to any of the safaris out there. When I lived out there, I did in fact have a Jeep, but it was a grossly underpowered Jeep with kind of puny tires. It was my little high school Jeep that I drove around, and it was fun, but definitely was not really. I mean, it was off-road worthy, but not the bestest off-road Jeep out there, I would say.
I see what you did there.
Do you like that? Yeah.
Mhm.
Maybe someday. Currently, I tend only to have one vehicle, so I'm a little disinclined sometimes to take it out and do crazy things with it because I need it to continue to provide transportation for me to and from work on a daily basis. I don't really want to bang it up or harm it in any way. But yeah, I agree. Utah is beautiful, especially southern Utah, where all that backcountry rock crawling stuff is that they do. It's at least worth seeing, even if you don't do the Jeep stuff.
It is beautiful. That is for sure. I almost died once on a bike
God.
ride.
At where?
Well, thank you.
On a
Thank God
bike
you
ride.
didn't.
In Utah? In
Yeah,
Moab?
before I even started doing podcasting.
Would have saved us all a lot of
In
time.
the,
No, I'm just kidding.
in the 90s. Yeah, it's too bad I didn't die.
That would have been terribly tragic, and we're very glad
Thanks
you
a lot,
didn't.
Steph.
Yeah, we're glad
Gosh
you
darn
didn't, and the podcast would suffer from that.
I take
if you
everything
did.
back, Steph.
Oh. Sorry.
Okay. So great feedback. Thank you, Rick. And I'm sure we'll have I would love to be out there in Salt Lake City for a meetup because I love that city.
Yeah.
And,
Rick, the one thing I'll add to that is if you think the Jeep stuff is amazing out in Utah, you also need to check out some of the amazing flying that's done out west. I would encourage you to check out the Flying Cowboys, and there's a modified aircraft called Draco, and all of its short takeoff and landing stuff. It is an amazing aircraft.
He's in Utah. Cool thing. Cool stuff.
wait a minute, Flying Cowboys. No, I saw him in New York City.
No,
near
that's
Times
the
Square.
naked cowboy.
Oh,
Yeah, completely
that's
different cowboy, Jeff.
okay. Oh well. Yeah, never mind.
And the fact that you're looking at cowboys is pretty disturbing.
I love the Cowboys.
We'll just assume you mean the Dallas Cowboys and move on.
Okay. All right. So
Jeff, being a Texan here, I'm a little concerned about that.
I'm just kidding, of course. Okay, as far as you know. We have a lot of great stuff still left in this feedback folder that Liz foolishly thought that we were going to be able to get to, including Tim. He's a new listener on his journey to become an airline pilot. Swedish Gustav, who gave us that wonderfully generous donation, sent us a link to this article that the reason why I didn't discuss it, because I know that we're going to discuss this for quite a while, an article from USA Today on, quote, pilots are losing their basic flying skills. Yes, we have opinions about that. We have Greg with simulator training, Marcus with ergonomics of flight controls, Dave on hacking the ILS system, .com call signs, Ivor, who knows what he's going to talk about. It's going to be interesting, though, I can tell you for sure. And much, much more, including perhaps your feedback. If you send us feedback at airlinepilotguy.com, you can do that, or you can use the iOS or Android app, the Airline Pilot Guy app, to send us feedback. So many ways. The Airline Pilot Guy site is wonderful. It has all kinds of good information about the crew, the community, the APG store, where you can get your APG swag, APG Live. We have the Plane Tales page, where you can find all those fantastic plain tales, which is the best part of the show. We have the APG library. Our librarian Tiffany has put together an amazing collection of wonderful pieces of literature that you might want to check out. That and much, much more. And guess what? We're still and always will be on social media.
We will. Even the social meets.
And the social meets, yeah.
Check it out over at twitter.com. Our handle there is at APG Crew. Find our individual information pinned to the top of that page. We'd love to chat with you there briefly. 280 characters or less.
Yeah, we're not going to spend a lot of time.
No. It's not what we do.
No.
You can also find us on Facebook, facebook.com/airline pilot guy. All kinds of community interaction happening there. Articles being shared, people discussing things related to aviation and the aviation, commercial aviation industry. You can also now find us on Instagram. Oh gosh, I think the handle is the same as the Twitter one, at APG Crew. I've added a few things there, and I plan to do some more. So
on the Insta,
keep watching. On the Insta, the Iggy, the IG.
Didn't they try to do that? Make it Insta, and then nobody went. Yeah. Everybody went.
Instagram.
No, Instagram. That sounds dorky. Okay. Excellent. And we also are on the quasi social media platform where all the APG Slackers hang out, and it's called Slack. And Hillel is going to tell us about that.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share ideas and news. We suggest episode and Plain Tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK, Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com. Or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled HI11E1, Hotel India 11 Echo 1. And see you in Slack.
Thanks, Hillel. Now get back to the bathroom. And that is it for today's show. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening, for subscribing, for downloading, all those things you do to listen to us every week. Review us if you'd like. And we love you, and we're glad that you love us. And speaking of love, wow, we have a lot of love for our producer, Liz Piper in Toronto.
Brilliant.
She does such a great job of really helping, mostly me, prepare this whole thing. So she makes me look good, and I really love her for that. And until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Talons, Douglas.
Cheers, y'all.
Cheers, everybody.
Aloha.
Thanks, guys.
Aloha.
It's hello, goodbye, and good night.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like aloha. Nick, are you still awake? Apparently somebody's sending us.
Yeah, I'm doing fine. I think.
No. Yes. I don't know.
Look at the way he looks.
Yeah.
Recorder's off. Recorder's off.
I didn't record anything.
It's 1 o'clock in the bloody morning. That's what the problem is.
Okay, my recorder is stopped.
Mine is 3 hours and 10 minutes. Stopped.
Save. Wow. That was fun. Thanks,
Good one.
everybody.
Yeah. Thanks for having me,
Didn't get
guys.
through much,
Yeah,
but it
David.
was great fun.
Thanks for being
Great
here.
that you were able to meet Captain Dana, and what a treat staying at the Dana mansion. And
we're going to feed him shortly.
I know. I was just going to say
yeah,
that's going to be the
that is
best
the real
part
treat.
because Dana is such a great cook. So
I'm not cooking tonight, though. Julie is.
Oh,
So
Julie. Well, she's a great cook
we're,
as well.
we're definitely in trouble.
I've never had any. Have I ever had Julie's cooking?
No.
I don't
Okay.
think we
There's a
have.
reason why.
Uh-oh.
Wow. It's a good thing she doesn't listen to the show.
It's even better.
Don't anybody
damn good
tell
thing.
Julie what he just said.
Tread carefully. Tread carefully.
Hey, Dana, I did a brisket before my last show last weekend, and it was amazing. And guess what? You're not going to believe this, but I found this YouTube site, and this guy who's a championship barbecuer, especially with briskets, he has a method called high and fast instead of low and slow.
Yes, I know that method.
Oh, Harry Sue?
Yes.
I don't know. Okay. And I thought, I'm going to give this a shot because I don't have a lot of time. And it was awesome. I cooked it at 400 degrees for 3 hours, and then I finished it in the oven at 275 for another hour. So basically about 4 hours.
Did you add any smoke to it, though?
Huh?
Did you add any smoke to it?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Liquid smoke?
No. In the egg, I put some hickory and mesquite.
Oh, okay.
And it was really, really, I was amazed. I was very skeptical that this was going to be good, but it was the best brisket I've ever made.
The big thing is the internal temperature. I mean, that's the most important thing. If you can get the internal temperature up to just about 195,
yeah,
200.
I think mine was about 210 actually.
Oh wow!
After it finished, but it was amazing. It was anyway. People don't want to hear that. They're listening to the show, but anyway, I was so impressed with the outcome of that, and it was a prime brisket from Costco.
Well, Costco has excellent meat anyways.
There's a YouTube channel that I watch on occasion, Jeff, the channel is Smoked Meats with Jeff, and he does some really interesting stuff. But one of the things
you want to smoke your meat with me?
Yeah. One of the things that he did that I replicated was
I'll smoke your meat.
Smoked meatloaf stuffed with mac and cheese wrapped in bacon, and it was amazing.
That sounds so healthy, but
yeah, super unhealthy, but it was amazing.
Wow. I'll have to look up smoked meats with Jeff.
Smoked meats. What about your meat?
Smoked. Okay. Well, that's
Well
great.
then.
Yes. Well then. Okay. Thanks everyone for hanging with us in the chat room, especially those of you who have endured PTUK and APG. That's a lot of time in the seat. I know my butt's sore. And
Careful,
that's what she said.
Pressures.
Yeah. My meat is smoked. And
I bet it is.
I'm not sure when we're going to do the show next week, but it will be sometime for sure. And we're going to go ahead and sign off. So thanks all for
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Good night.
Good night.